Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Lettuce Head Fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction. This is the series of What If Deku Inherited Overhaul's Quirk. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Shai Hasaikai Compound, during the Overhaul raid? PM 2XXX. The walls of the Yakuza base are warped. The medium gray concrete stretches, broken in every direction. Now, it's just a mockery of what used to be walls and a floor. One of the top pro heroes in Japan, Sir Night Eye, lays impaled on a nearby spike as life drips away. Mirio, Night Eye's apprentice and Izuku's senior, is on the floor, quirkless and holding on to consciousness by a thread. Izuku himself isn't faring much better. Pain from his previous injuries forces him into a stagger while standing, holding his head to make sure it won't sink. Dark red bled on areas of his costume, serving as a testament to his already lengthy battle with Overhaul. The memory of Eri willingly returning to Chisaki was fresh on his mind, as was the shame from having stood and watched while the villain escaped with her. Izuku grits his teeth, a second wind of determination flying through him. Now isn't the time to lose hope. She isn't gone yet, I have to save her. I need to be strong enough. Chisaki can't get away because of me. Izuku's head throbs as he pulls his eyes upward to the reaching concrete obelisk. Distantly, he can see Chisaki and Eri, the former downright demonic, with his 4 arms and blood-red beaked mask, the latter shaking and terrified. Another minute and he won't be able to see them at all. Izuku steadies himself, crouching to prepare for a one-for-all powered jump. The deep puncture wounds in his legs and arms make him weak, and the nauseatingly fast speed of his thoughts make him reckless. Hearing Eri say she didn't believe in him was heartbreaking, and seeing her with Chisaki sends cracks across his composure. Every second wasted down here is another second Eri fades further away. He wavers before jumping, pain splintering from the stone that's chalked between his bones. The injury threatens to prevent him from saving someone who needs it more than anything. All you've done has been for nothing, Chisaki's words from minutes prior echo inside Izuku's ears. Overhaul is wrong, and Izuku would prove it. The wind feels cool against his face when he finally enters the air, soaring up Chisaki's escape ladder. There was a miscalculation. Maybe it was because of his injuries, maybe because of his lack of power with One for All, maybe it was the growing distance Chisaki kept building with his quirk, maybe all of those things working together were responsible, but Izuku fails to get on the platform. He has to throw himself up against the slab just to hold on, burrowing his fingers inside the concrete and praying to dear life that his fingers would let him hold on. Eri needs me, I have to do this. He lets out an animalistic sound of desperation, using every trick and ounce of determination in his body just to gain a bit higher. It isn't enough. The rate of Chisaki's overhaul is too much, and Izuku realizes that he's failing. He's giving it his all, and he's still failing? The unfairness feels like a shower of salt on his bloody and ruined body. There has to be something I can do, some way to get to her. The tower stutters, its extension halting with an unexpected flicker. His heart stutters in his chest. This is it. Izuku isn't sure why Chisaki stopped, but this is his last chance. Izuku hauls himself over the edge and onto the platform with a graceless slump. Chisaki, to Izuku's infinite relief, is stunned. His lackeys are lying beside him, somehow separated and now unconscious like their boss. Izuku takes quick note and scrambles towards Eri. She's shivering, still wrapped in the red cape Mirio had lent her earlier. Her red eyes are latched onto Chisaki's still form, glassy with tears and terror. She doesn't seem to see Izuku until he scoops her off the floor, yelling, "Gotcha!" The girl is now cradled in his arms, safe. Their eyes meet, shocked red and determined green. There's a moment of suffocating doubt in Eri's expression. She still doesn't trust him. It hurts, but Izuku brushes it off, not forgetting that he might have mere moments before Chisaki recovers. Not wasting even a second more, Izuku prepares another leap, hoping he can clear the remaining 50 or so feet to safety. Eri's scarlet eyes widen, welling into large orbs of terror as they fix onto something over Izuku's shoulder. 5 wrathful fingers curl around Izuku's neck, pulling him back. "Oh no you don't!" screams Overhaul, throwing Izuku to the floor as though he were nothing more than a doll. He cries as Chisaki sands him against the rough concrete, his skin peeling in the places his costume didn't meet it. Eri falls to the floor beside him, nearly toppling off the edge of the platform. Izuku doesn't even get the chance to retaliate before every muscle in his body goes lax, all the tension leaving with his control. A prickling numbness spreads throughout him, settling in from head to toe. Even pain leaves. Panic and adrenaline are the only things left. Izuku desperately tries to get to his feet anyways, sending command after unanswered command to get up and save her, but his limbs had gone on strike, refusing to acknowledge his pleas. The realization that Chisaki had paralyzed him hits like a bullet, traveling through him as a shockwave of despair. Overhaul's gaze flickers towards Izuku. The villain dusts off the hand he'd used to touch Izuku with a displeased sneer. Although Izuku is frozen, hot, hopeless tears build in his eyes. He's been caught, and while his heart still continues to beat, in Izuku's mind he's already dead. He could only watch as Chisaki takes off his other glove, his disgust suching to the young girl Izuku had failed to save. "Eri," Overhaul hisses, dripping with violent rage. I wasn't going to leave. Let him go dash." Though Chisaki now blocks Izuku's view of Eri, the tremble in her voice makes it obvious how scared she is. "Run," he begged, praying that somehow, someway, she'd hear him and understand the urgency of the command, that somehow she'd be able to escape even though they were all suspended hundreds of feet in the air. "Do I look blind to you?" Chisaki questions coldly. "Because I saw that. It still hasn't sunken in, has it?" Izuku tries desperately to inch his fingers or toes. Moving was useless. Painfully so, and he knew it, and the knowledge was painful too, but he still tried. He tried to do something, anything beyond blink. The more you struggle, the more people around you get hurt, Overhaul dictates, a mask of faux calm making his voice sound so much more authoritative than it has any right to. I'm sorry please. I'll never try again, don't hurt him." She begs, voice breaking out into a sob. Izuku's heart bursts in sympathetic pain. More tears reach down his face and onto the blood-soaked concrete pillowing his head. "If I'd just been a little faster. If I hadn't let her go that day." Chisaki crosses his arms, his immeasurable contempt only growing fiercer. "I'm sorry too. I didn't want to use such a disgusting specimen to help you learn your lesson." A chill settles into every part of his body. Lesson? Tears blind Izuku's vision. Oh no, of course. It was clear why Chisaki hadn't disassembled him right away. Izuku wasn't lucky enough to have been spared. No, and that's clear now. Chisaki must have a fate so much worse prepared for him. And in Izuku's vulnerable state, he would just be a pawn. Every muscle in Izuku's unmoving throat yells to Eri, demanding she not listen to him, giving her that much before his inevitable doom. In the end he's helpless, too weak. Just a Deku. Once more, Chisaki's fingers dig into the soft skin of Izuku's neck. The grip keeps air out of his throat, like Chisaki is trying to get back at him for having the nerve to exist. Overhaul yanks Izuku face to face with him, the tip of Chisaki's mask just below Izuku's chin. Izuku glares at him, it's the only thing he can do. Overhaul sighs again, this time nearly seeming disappointed. His heartless yellow eyes contain something that could be generously called pity, if Chisaki could even feel such a thing. "A shame I couldn't cure you too." And then, without any further warning, a single agonizing moment of tearing, flesh-splitting pain, reverberating and ricocheting in every cell, becoming undone. Consciousness slips back to him in pieces. First came feeling. There's the uncomfortable buzz shrouding his muscles, like thick cotton pads are stuffed between his joints. Other sensations register as the curtain of sleep lifts, like the soft cushions below him and the unwieldy material pulling his wrists to one side of the bed. A crisp, sterile scent enters his nose. It's nice, relaxing, though he's not sure why. The smell of a sterilized environment seems like a weird thing to find relaxing. His eyes flutter open in a daze, blue-white lights hammer down on him, and he groans, putting his hand over his eyes in self-defense. Or he would have done that had stiff metal around his wrists not pulled him back. He shakes off some more exhaustion, needing to find out what's restraining him. Are those HNDCFFS? Izuku's eyes hinge open, and he shoots up like a bullet, instantly regretting it when a mountain of all-consuming pain lands on him. An anguished noise escapes his throat. It's as though every molecule of flesh in his body is in the wrong place. Even his eyes aren't spared the burn. Izuku groans, falling back in his unforgiving white bed, trying not to move anything too much or too fast while his body attempts to kill him. He twitches his hands, weakly tugging on the sturdy cuffs with his papier-mâché arms and half-cooked pasta bones. Izuku curls up in an aching ball. Breaking his arms and legs didn't even hurt this bad. Almighty up above, what happened to me? Then, as though a cruel god was listening in, everything crashes back to him, the impact hitting like a truck. The memory hurts almost as bad as the physical pain. The Shai Hasaikai raid, Eri, Kai and his last chilling words, the way they resonated in his ears before going under. An involuntary shudder courses through him, causing his sore self more pain. A thick coat of bitter failure overpowers the lingering vestiges of fear. Izuku curls handfuls of his bedsheets into unsteady fists. Whether he's been captured by Kai or brought to a hospital by heroes, being here means he couldn't defeat Kai by himself. He couldn't protect Eri like he promised to. He wasn't strong enough. Izuku's failure isn't the only thing drawing his attention. There's a nagging thrum at the base of his skull. He feels like he's forgetting something important. Is it about Lemillion? Night Eye maybe? The other heroes at the raid? Izuku's memories aren't fractured, not even a bit, but the amnestic emptiness doesn't leave him. The worry doesn't leave either. He has no clue what happened after he lost consciousness. Never mind how he's alive and moving too. Night Eye was pretty banged up when Izuku last saw him, and Lemillion got hit by one of Kai's quirk erasing bullets. This pain is so small in comparison. Night Eye and Lemillion might have lost their careers and lives for Eri, but Izuku, the one who failed the most, ended up fine? If he survived, shouldn't Kai at least have paralyzed him? Izuku takes a depressed breath in. He used to hate the smell of hospitals. He had too many broken bones and injured friends to link to the scent. Now though, he appreciates how clean it is. He's in a hospital, right? The nice, sanitary white walls, linoleum floor, everything about the room looks like a hospital. Everything except for the HNDCFFS. He pulls at them again, feeling sharp, contemplative displeasure at their continued presence. If he's with a hero, the cuffs must mean there's something up with One for All, right? Could that mean Kai still messed with his quirk, even if it's not gone like Mirio's? Izuku won't hold his breath. The cuffs could also mean he's in Kai's custody, and his quirk is being restricted to prevent escape. Kai does seem like the kind of creep who'd restructure a hostage cell to look like a hospital. Well, here's to hoping he hasn't been kidnapped. Izuku doesn't even want to imagine what that would mean for him. In the next few hours, the soreness dies down. Time dulls the stabbing pulse to a low drum. He's almost feeling normal when the door to his room wobbles. He's half expecting to see a menacing man with a beaked mask to walk in, carrying an armful of needles and terrifying medical contraptions, but the image dissipates quickly when a nurse with a weary face appears instead. "Hi," he greets, noticing how his voice is still a little hoarse. The nurse jumps a little, color draining from her face as she fidgets with papers in her hands. Sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. Are you okay?" Izuku asks, eyebrows folding in a concerned arch. The nurse assures him she's all right with a smile that argues the opposite. She tells him that her reaction was just a product of surprise, nothing more. Other heroes will be with him in a moment, so don't worry. She says that part twice, but it almost seems like she's not talking to Izuku. When she leaves, she's near sprinting, slamming the door behind her with a resolute bang, despite Izuku's protests. Izuku stares at the door after she's gone, trying to find a single reason why she ran off like that. Is he radioactive? Is he secretly naked? Did Kai mess his face up, and his horrible deformity scared her? Why? Does he feel like that won't be the weirdest thing that'll happen to him today? He plops back on his side restlessly. A small eternity passes. Izuku occupies himself as best as he can with a mix of daydreams and facing off against himself in rock, paper, scissors. He lost a discouraging number of times. When the door opens for the second time, it's for Eraserhead and Detective Tsukachi. Izuku almost weeps tears of joy. Finally, a familiar face. Finally, he thinks, finally, some answers. He's about to tell them he's glad they're here when the 10-ton mood hits him. Eraserhead, who was almost always near expressionless, carries a restrained hostility Izuku has only ever seen when the pro was facing villains. Detective Tsukachi isn't much better, his face holding a quiet, disdainful scrutiny that should only be reserved for guilty suspects. Tsukachi pulls up a nearby chair, sitting next to Izuku with a near-comic level of seriousness. "What's wrong with everyone?" Hi." Izuku greets, awkwardly becoming aware of the lack of space between them. The detective's breathing sounds a lot louder than it should, or maybe it's just the first time he's been so sensitive to the noise. But, that demon noise, it makes him feel sick. Izuku finds himself scooting away from the man as much as his cuffs allow. It's not enough, though, nowhere near enough. "Hello," Tsukachi says, giving Izuku a shallow, impersonal smile. Izuku swallows. Did something happen? What kind of question is that? Izuku, you just got back from a Yakuza raid. Is this about Kai? That's an even worse question. Of course, it's about him. I might have been the last one to see him before he did whatever he did after I passed out. Izuku is almost too preoccupied with beating himself up to feel the subtle change of air after mentioning Kai's name. The tension doesn't lessen, but it also doesn't get worse, it just changes. "No, not necessarily," the detective answers, retrieving a yellow-lined notepad and a blue ink pen from his coat. "Unless, of course, you have something to tell us about him," Tsukachi adds, pen clicking eagerly. Izuku swallows the knot in his throat. "I don't think so." "Then this'll be quick. I'm just going to ask a couple of questions. Nothing big, I just need a rundown of the events of the Shai Hasaikai raid for a report." "Oh, alright. But then why is he here?" Izuku wonders, head pointed at Eraserhead. "And why do I have H and Givus?" He questions, lifting the heavy metal cuffs chaining him. "Your quirk was acting up while you were out." "Okay." He flashes a fake smile to convince himself he doesn't want to know more. "I didn't hurt anyone, did I?" "No, nothing like that. First, can you tell us your name? And answer in full sentences, please." "My name is Izuku. Midoriya Izuku. We've met before? I'm in Eraserhead's class. You know, the guy standing right there? 5 days a week for the past 2 years?" Although both Tsukachi and Eraserhead have had years of practice hiding their emotions, the relief that follows Izuku's answer isn't subtle. "Who else would I be?" It's a joke, obviously, but nobody laughs. The silence in the fallout is so consuming and uncomfortable that Izuku wishes there was a nearby window to escape from. "But it's just procedure," dismisses the detective, writing something down on his notepad. "I have to ask even if I already know." "Oh, I guess that makes sense. Still, it's kinda weird to tell you my name twice. And how you acted like it was surprising." I imagine so. Now, what's the last thing you remember?" Tsukachi continues. "Kai. I got to the room where he and Mirio were fighting, and he managed to get a hold of Eri, so I tried to save her, but Kai got me too, and then I couldn't move. I think he might have paralyzed me. That sensation, the one of every one of his cells revolting, it taunts him. Kai, he had me in his grip. I should have been done for. I thought I was as good as dead, but then I woke up here." The scribble of the detective's pencil follows Izuku's words like an echo. "And after that, do you remember anything else after that?" Izuku averts his eyes, bringing them to his cuffed hands. The events of the raid play through once more in his head, but the gnawing empty space left after Kai remains blank. Izuku has dim in all but the taste of amnesia. "Nothing," he admits tightly, "but if you're asking then, we didn't get Kai, did we? I'm sorry, but I didn't see where he went. Is Eri okay?" There's a loaded pause afterward. She's still with Kai, then, Izuku infers, throat pinched and head low. Eraserhead crosses his arms, an almost sympathetic expression passing his face. No. Midoriya, she's safe. And Overhaul. Eraserhead pauses mid-sentence as if he's weighing the words in his mind. Tsukachi exchanges a sharp glare with the pro, giving him a warning shot. Overhaul has yet to be found. Izuku glances between the two men once more. Anything else I need to know? It wasn't that Izuku didn't trust Eraserhead, but he got the feeling that maybe there was something the hero wasn't being entirely forthcoming about. The detective shakes his head, handing Izuku an unhelpful, "I don't think so." You sure? Izuku pushes again. Yes. Next question. Dreams. Did you have any strange dreams while you were out? Hallucinations perhaps, anything that wouldn't quite make sense. Anything that wouldn't make sense? Izuku repeats. Just tell us if anything seemed unusual. No. Full sentences, please. No, I did not have any weird dreams or anything else while I was unconscious, he says, trying his best to keep his irritation suppressed. Good. Tsukachi jots that down with a firm nod. What about pain? You said Chisaki paralyzed you earlier. Are you still feeling anything from that? Shouldn't a doctor be asking that? I was a little sore earlier, but I feel fine now. Does the treatment have any side effects? Tsukachi raises an eyebrow. Treatment? Now it's Izuku's turn to raise an eyebrow. You know the thing you did to unparalyze me? You didn't go through any treatments, Tsukachi informs blankly, heaping on a truckload of confusion in 6 little words. What? Kai definitely paralyzed me. Are you sure you didn't do anything? The detective shakes his head. If they didn't do anything to help me, then did. Is that all, detective? Eraserhead steps away from the wall, arms crossed over his chest. Tsukachi and Eraserhead share another silent conversation, and the detective relents with a sigh. Pretty much. Then there's no reason he should still have those on, Eraserhead asserts, gesturing to Izuku's HS. The detective's mouth flattens into a line. Fine. I'll send the guy in. Tsukachi is gone a moment later, radio in hand. If Izuku hadn't known any better, he would have thought he were 100 pounds of short-fused TNT. It's not long before someone comes in, though it's not a nurse or a doctor. It's a police officer, and he's holding a shiny steel key in his hand. How bad must one for all have been acting up for police to be here? Or, maybe this was normal. Izuku can't pretend to know the procedure for this sort of thing, so no need to get shaken over it. This was probably just routine. The officer walks by, yanking Izuku's wrists closer. His skin prickles, thousands of fleshy needles pressing against him, instant revulsion. He's never hated a sensation as much as he hates this. Izuku pulls his wrists away with a frantic fervor, as though he'll melt if the contact continues for a second longer. The officer shoots him an annoyed glance, and Izuku apologizes, wrestling with himself to give his wrists back. As soon as the mechanism is undone, both Izuku and the man retreat, Izuku withdrawing his hands and the officer backing up to the edge of the room. Izuku is left to appreciate some much missed circulation, blood rushes back to his hands, and along with it comes a persistent buzz below his nails. The sense of crackling numb coating his fingertips is not unlike the feeling of a limb falling asleep. He stretches his hands, trying to shake the feeling off as he wriggles his fingers. The motion further loosens the cuffs, and the comparatively gentle fizz flames angrily, spreading out from the tips of his nails to his joints, and then further down to his palm once he's completely free of the restraint. It's horrible, like soda bubbles brimming under his skin, or the teeth-aching noise of a fly's hum, and it magnifies by 100 when his index brushes up against his bedsheets. Chains, holes, irregular and moving but invisible to the eye, it's trypophobia made touch. He stiffly juts his arms out in front of him, trying his very best to keep his hands isolated. Midoriya? Barks Eraserhead, knocking Izuku back to reality with his name. The hero seems a hair away from slapping the cuffs back on. Izuku might prefer it if he did. I'm fine. Izuku reasserts, not moving from his awkward, arm-plank pose. Eraserhead's bagged eyes are full of enough skepticism that he doesn't even need an answer to know how much the hero believes him. Izuku tries to explain that. He's not sure why he's doing this either. Eraserhead promptly ignores him, turning towards the door and gesturing for the officer to follow. "We'll be back later," Eraserhead grumbles. "I need to make a couple of calls before we can release you." And once again, Izuku is left alone and confused. His shoulders droop with a resigned huff. He just wants to see his friends, or Inko. Really, anyone who isn't acting like a space alien would be a nice change of pace. The minutes while Eraserhead is gone pass agonizingly slowly. Each tick-tock of the clock is a year off his life, and his arms are starting to lose circulation from holding them in the air. The low murmur under his skin doesn't stop. It doesn't even decrease as he's sitting there. It's more manageable when his fingers are spread wide apart and deathly still, but even the slightest draft of air wafts against them insufferably, causing an involuntary shudder throughout his body. Since the sensation only started after the quirk restraining cuffs went off, does that mean this has something to do with One for All? Did All Might ever experience anything like this? He'll have to ask him ASAP. Izuku doesn't know how much longer he can deal with this without either going insane or becoming Deku, the fingerless hero. The door to his room creaks open, and Izuku is on the edge of his seat. A bundle of clothes hurtles toward his face. Izuku barely catches it, swallowing a wave of disorientation when his fingers connect with the fabric. The cloth almost feels spiky, pins and needles rubbing against him, and he drops it on instinct. Eraserhead studies the reaction. His eyes narrow for a half-second, perhaps filing Izuku's reaction away in some mental drawer before leaving again. Izuku pushes off his blanket, trying his best not to get frustrated at his teacher's antisocial behavior. Aizawa is always like that. No need to upset himself over nothing. Izuku dangles his legs over the edge of bed, huffing as he jumps to his feet. He takes an unthinking step forwards, but his internal mechanisms fail. For a reason unbeknownst to Izuku, his legs lift much higher than they should when he goes to take a step, which wouldn't have been a problem had he been 5 inches taller, but Izuku was 5 feet 5 inches, not 5 feet 10 inches, so he capsizes, falling over and kissing the grimy hospital floor. There, Izuku lays for a whole second, his face one with the linoleum. Izuku couldn't ever say he'd been suicidal before, but in that moment, he wants to die. Unfortunately, life isn't that merciful, and his heart keeps on beating. Grains of dust and grime from the floor grate on Izuku's face. A shudder of disgust brought him back to life. He scrambles to his feet, though his limbs hadn't quite shaken the weakness he'd felt after waking up, and he nearly trips again trying to steady himself. His cheeks burn a bright, embarrassed red, silently thankful nobody had been there to watch him. The clothes Eraserhead gave him are plain, obviously cheap, set in neutral shades of black and gray. He begins to question where exactly the clothes came from, grumbling to himself that they'd better have been new and washed. Dressing himself is an exercise on how much he can avoid using his hands. Once he's fully dressed, or mostly dressed, they hadn't thought to include shoes in Izuku's outfit, but that's okay. He should just be thankful they didn't push him out with only a flimsy gown to protect him. He joins Eraserhead outside soon after, and the man begins walking down the pale hall. Izuku keeps close behind, eyes wandering around curiously. Strangely enough, the other patient rooms seem. He tries to catch a glimpse of someone through the small 4x4 windows, a thick disbelief when room after room, window after window, he sees no one, meaning he was the only person in the whole wing. Did they evacuate the other patients because One for All was acting up? Was it really that bad? Izuku struggles to believe that, but can't think of any other explanation. At least nobody got hurt. That's what they told him at least, and Izuku chooses to believe that they were telling the truth. Approaching the lobby, Izuku notices 2 policemen standing in front of the doors to the lobby. They make brief eye contact with Eraserhead, sharing a curt nod. Izuku isn't sure what to make of that, putting it with the other million bizarre things today. Similarly to the rest of the hospital, the lobby is eerily empty, save for an attendant behind the front desk. Izuku meandered about the room, very much anxious from the pair of eyes burgeoning into his back. He ambles over to a hand sanitizer dispenser on the opposite end of the room, more out of a need for a distraction than anything else. He hovers his hands under the dispenser, a jet of clear fluid dispensing into his palm. Then, something very strange happens. The buzz encasing his fingers soothes, dying down like he poured a bucket of cold water on a fire. Stumped as to why that would help, of all things, he dispenses more, only to be further confused by the increased relief. Izuku dash! A shrill, worried screech explodes from behind, breaking Izuku from his mesmerization. Before Izuku even has the chance to turn around, a pair of arms lock around him, almost knocking him over with the sheer force of the tackle. Pins and needles erupt over the areas that share skin contact, burning with an acidic spike. His teeth grind against each other, brains suching to red alert. His hands clasped together in a practiced motion, as if he was wearing invisible gloves that needed to be removed. If Izuku had the time to analyze it, he would have thought it strange, but he didn't have time, because he was being released from the suffocating grip and spun around to face a woman who he didn't immediately recognize as Midoriya Inko, his mother. Her face was a deep, puffy red, and her lip was trembling as she said things that didn't reach Izuku's ears. He shook himself, once, twice, trying to rid himself of the deep-seated contempt that had buried in. Inko seems to notice his discomfort, her eyebrows pinch with concern. She hesitantly grabs his wrist, commenting something about hives that Izuku can only half pay attention to. Small dots of skin raise in irritation around the area she touches, red and angry. Izuku's mind tries to be patient while every fiber of his being screams for her to stop touching me, right now. Inko! He croaks, "See, can you please stop that?" He asks, bordering the edge of polite and aggressive. She gives him a slightly confused, but ultimately sympathetic nod, setting him free from the touch. When they're finally apart, Inko opens her mouth, but promptly shuts it and begins to stare. She brings her hands up to her eyes, gesturing awkwardly, "Izuku? Your dash." Eraserhead appears next to them, setting a hand on the older woman's shoulder. He explains that Izuku will be going home with Inko today and returning to UA the next. He says he'll explain more when she gets home, handing her a piece of paper with his number. Izuku isn't in the headspace to question anything, so he approves with a nod, taking the path to the nearest hot shower. The walk to Inko's car is silent and tense, proceeding that way the rest of the drive. Izuku does his best to forget about everything that happened, ignore the slowly building hum under his skin. Beams of soft golden sunlight shone in through Inko's window, painting her kitchen a relaxing, dreamy yellow. She hummed a song she'd heard on the radio the other day. She wagged her finger along to the beat with one hand and stirred fluffy eggs that would soon become breakfast with the other. Inko constructed a list of the chores she'd have to do today, what groceries to buy, what meals to make, and what to do for herself after it was all done. Most of all, Inko thought of what she'd do with her son. She looked forward to spending some long overdue time with him. She'd missed it these past couple of years, as Izuku was always busy with his hero school, but she wouldn't depress herself thinking about that. Even though he'd seemed quite out of it yesterday. Naturally, she gave his teacher a call, but he didn't say much, not about her son's behavior and certainly not about the eyes. She'd asked Izuku himself quite a few questions, but Aizu fell asleep halfway through the drive, and he must have needed it. She didn't wake him. How could she? How could a good mother wake her exhausted son to pester him with questions? Inko never could keep her head straight when it came to Aizu. He was going to UA and had been for the past 2 years. To her, though, he was still very much the same fragile 4-year-old with a heart too big for his body. That was likely why she found it so agonizing when the hospital workers refused to tell her what had happened, being obtusely vague on the details. Had Izuku broken any bones? What about bruises? Had he been shot? Poisoned? Burned? What about heat slide? Hypothermia maybe dash? Temporarily blinded? Suffering from internal bleeding? Coma? Caught up in the side effects of someone's quirk? A heart attack? We're releasing him into your care. But what happened? Keep a close eye on him today. She couldn't stop her anxiety-addled mind from creating all kinds of scenarios of all the terrible things. Inko needed a glass of wine last night, though it was as unhelpful as always. Inko sighed. It was a long and tired sound, lumbering its way from her chest. The delicious, fluffy eggs cooking in the pan kept her away from sadness. It'd be a delectable breakfast, no doubt, made only more pleasant by the knowledge her son would be joining her. She'd missed these mornings these past 2 years. 2 years. Gosh, her boy was nearly an adult. She didn't know what she would do with herself after he graduated. Speaking of Izuku, it was strange he wasn't awake yet. He was usually good about being up early, but it was nearly 8 hours after Izuku should have woken up, and she had yet to hear a peep from him. Inko's brow pressed together with a well-honed motherly worry. She turned off the stove, setting the pan on the back burners before heading upstairs. Inko arrived at his room, pausing to knock on the door before entering, as any parent should if they wish to avoid seeing things they'd rather not. She waited for a response. "Izuku!" She hollered, raising her volume enough to guarantee that he'd hear her through the door. "I'm coming in, okay dash?" Inko rested her hand on the knob, counting to 3 once again for thoroughness, before entering. The smell of bleach and rubbing alcohol whacks her across the face, and her hand is at her nose, shielding her nostrils from the sharp, antiseptic smell. A slight breeze wafts in from a left-open window, and she notices that the room is noticeably cleaner than she last remembers. The walls are plain, missing both the signature stains and the bright red-yellow-blue All Might posters that should have lined the walls. The floor was as spotless as the day she'd moved in. The thin coat of dust that the room had accumulated during Izuku's absence was gone. The vacuum she'd heard going last night is still plugged into the wall. The bed is missing its sheets, blanket, and pillows, which Inko recalls seeing in the washer yesterday. Izuku's desk holds his impressive collection of hero merchandise in one red, yellow, and blue pile. There isn't a single surface that holds a speck of dirt. She might have been impressed if not for the state of Izuku himself. Her boy was slumped against the closet door, his eyes, fully lidded, sported small dark circles. His chest rose and fell peacefully. Blue RBB gloves hugged his hands, a cylinder of Clorox wipes nestled cozily between fingers. Did he sleep here all night? Her chest clenches sympathetically, and her eyebrows form a tent on her forehead. "Izuku!" she voiced softly. When he didn't wake, she crouched down to his level, reaching for his shoulder in a second attempt to gently rouse him. The moment her hand schemes his shoulder, he jolts awake with a violent twitch, his vivid yellow eyes bursting open as he lunges forward, gloved hand snapping to her arm. Inko winced, caught off guard at the sudden movement, but she's too slow to dodge, so his fingers still catch her, RBB glove digging deep into the skin of her forearm. She doesn't hold back a shriek, partially born out of surprise and partially born of pain. Izuku lets go instantly, bumping his head against the wall when he tried backing up closer into it. His breath is short as his eyes flutter, seeming to descend closer to reality with every blink. Inko swallows the alarm building in her throat, quietly withdrawing. She almost asks where he picked that reaction up. What on earth could have made him do that? Then, Inko reminds herself of all the villain attacks he's suffered through the years, and the answer is obvious. She doesn't want to be a nuisance, and she most certainly doesn't want to make Aizu uncomfortable, even with a well-meaning question, so she settles for silence. They both avoid each other's eyes, neither eager to acknowledge Izuku's actions. Eventually, Inko decides they've waited enough, supposing their food will get cold if they wait much longer. I made breakfast?" she says, providing ample distraction for the both of them. Izuku stays quiet for a moment, so she gives him an awkward, but hopefully reassuring, smile. Izuku nods, mumbling a short, "thanks," as he soothes the sides of his head. Inko smiles again, a little more forced than the last time. "Of course, I'm just happy to have you home," she chirps, turning the notch of support up to 100. Izuku's mouth flattens into a guilty line. "Sorry about your arm. I don't know why It's okay," she cuts in, stopping Izuku before he can start giving himself a hard time over nothing. "You don't need to apologize, really, Izuku. I understand." The breakfast sitting before Izuku is objectively a culinary masterpiece. The eggs are fluffy, seasoned with tasteful but not overbearing spices, and the rice is similarly cultured, having been soaked in a tangy, savory sauce and fried to perfection. Or he's sure that's what he would say about it if he'd eaten any. Izuku pokes at the painstakingly prepared breakfast before him. The weight of Inko's stare is impressive even from across the table. Izuku doesn't look to meet her. He's too busy trying to scrounge up every shred of willpower in his body to take a bite. He doesn't know why he doesn't want to eat it. Logically, he has every reason to. He's hungry, Inko makes good food, it'll get cold if he doesn't start soon, the protein is healthy, but he's been telling himself that for the last 10 minutes, and it has yet to stop him from staring at the dish like it's been dragged through mud. Izuku's frown deepens. The sound of Inko clearing her throat is near deafening. "Are you full?" she asks, her tone painfully polite. "Yep," he lies. Izuku can't remember the last time he ate, his stomach is folding in on itself in hunger, but there is not a scrap of longing to consume anything on the plate. Inko responds with a nod, barely visible out of the corner of his eye. Izuku knows it'd probably help her to see him take a few bites, but he prods the food again, somehow wanting to eat it less than a few seconds ago. Maybe it's the awkward environment? Does he just need a little space? Izuku stands up, breaking the stiffness with a forced smile not unlike the ones Inko has been giving him all morning. "I'm going to get some air. Is that okay with you?" Izuku isn't necessarily asking for permission, more telling her, "I'm leaving," as he's already up and mostly ready to go. Inko doesn't answer right away, giving him a hesitant look. Are you sure that's a good idea?" she asks. How hard would it be to say yes? He won't encounter all for one out there. "I'll be fine. I just think it'd be good to have a bit of space," Izuku replies bluntly, though he promises he's trying his best not to be rude with her. Inko shakes her head. "Well, the doctor said I should dash." "I feel fine," he interrupts, impatience sizzling under his skin. Inko flinches like a wounded dog, forcing him to realize his mistake. Izuku sinks into a friendly smile. "Besides, I have my phone. I'll call if anything happens." Inko squirms, kneading the muscles of her arms with enough tension to snap a steel beam. "I suppose a little outdoor walk wouldn't hurt," Inko concedes, offering him a meek shrug. The instant he hears yes, he smiles, already at the door, throwing her a rushed, "Thank you, bye," and leaving before she can respond with a goodbye of her own. The conversation leaves his mind faster than oil slipping from a pool of water, and he's unconcerned with Inko. Down the street, there's not much for him. Izuku pushes forward anyway, showing unusual confidence. No one is about, and by no one he means no one. He wouldn't be surprised if a tumbleweed appeared just to roll dramatically down the street. Izuku looks right to left, then right again, mounting in confusion as he searches for a sign of life. Nothing. Not liking the ominous waves clinging to the air, he considers returning home. However, he decides against it after visualizing how it would look to be back so soon after making a big deal out of leaving. He'd feel too silly if he went back in under a minute. He can't imagine that this area is the pinnacle of business, but it's still weird, right? Even the occasional store he passes is left without a cashier. He starts running through possibilities in his mind. Is the world ending? Did a hero offer a signing of their autograph? Has he been transported to an alternate reality devoid of human life? Has a natural disaster hit? A villain? Izuku reaches into his pocket, about to make a pithy comment about how he'll be ready if he sees a villain because of his trusty heroic's license, only to short-circuit when he doesn't find the card in his left pocket. Did I forget it? No, of course I wouldn't have. I couldn't have, I never forget it. He checks his pockets. Left again, right, both on the back, doing it again when he turns up empty, then another time because he still can't believe the results. I forgot it. Izuku admits, dumbfounded. He tries to think of a single time when he's ever done that, but all he remembers are times when he forgot his phone, keys, anything else except. He's only broken out of his stupor when he encounters an incline in the road, pavement stretching at a steep vertical angle, but that isn't what gives him pause. It's distant but significant, the sound of a cheering crowd. He can barely make out the name they're calling, Mount Lady. Now he knows why the streets are empty. A small army of people is gathered in a semicircle, going wild for the scantily clad hero. She's posing for the crowd, nearly a skyscraper tall, holding someone between her pointer finger and thumb like a prize. The hero strikes a peace sign with her other hand as cameras flash below. The cheering crescendos, Mount Lady bows, carelessly tossing the criminal over to a small barricade of police. They eagerly strap on Quirk suspending cuffs and shove the bruised villain into a reinforced police car. Meanwhile, the crowd continues its celebration, and on some level, Izuku wants to join in. His first instinct is to feel relief at a villain's capture, maybe a bit of sadness that he missed the fight, but his second instinct prevents him from doing anything but staring from 20 feet away. The second instinct is disgust, broiling disgust. His breath is choked in his throat. He's terrified of getting too close. What if he breathes in their germs? Who knows where all those people have been? Who knows how many are sick? The idea of accidentally grazing them makes his skin prickle, threatening hives. He has to put his shirt over the lower half of his face in self-defense, though he's almost sure he's too far away to catch anything. Even in Izuku's panic, he knows this isn't normal. He tries to get himself to stop. He tries to react as he would, which is to not lose your marbles over the existence of a perfectly normal crowd. Izuku, come on, you were in the dead middle of a group just like this last week. Magno Opus was signing a photograph. The guy behind you had a runny nose. This isn't going to kill you. At least, that's what he tells himself logically. Mount Lady blows a dramatic kiss at the crowd, striking one final pose as she shrinks down to average size. A drop of wet liquid lands on his face. Izuku reactively jiggles, rushing to wipe it off like it's acid, convinced he's just been spat on from over 50 feet away. Then, another falls, followed by two more. Izuku slowly looks up at the cloud-filled sky, calming down when he realizes it's only rain. He makes a soft, "oh" noise as his gaze shifts back to the hero, fully prepared to feel silly. And he does, but a spout of disgust, no, contempt, something Izuku isn't used to at all, rises when he looks at the hero again. The posing, the fanfare, he can't help but think of it as cheap, treating her job like reality TV. The whole show leaves a bad taste in his mouth. Izuku dismisses it, he has to. The distaste presses into a dense knot in his gut, and he takes off before the crowd has the same idea. Izuku ducks into a nearby alley, emerging on the other side. He's not exactly sure where he's supposed to be going. Izuku feels a little stupid for not having a plan. He tries to amend that now, asking himself if there's anything he needs. Nothing comes to mind, and self-disappointment begins to form. He's wasting time, walking around like a headless chicken. Usually, Izuku wouldn't care much whether he was making good use of every moment. He's not like Ida or Yaoyorozu. He never quite knew how they could be so intense when it came to maximizing their days. Is this what they feel like? Like the act of relaxation is a crime? He can't shake the feeling that there's something he needs to be doing, executing a plan, training, stuff like that. Izuku crosses his arms, eyes twitching with thinly repressed annoyance. He takes a deep breath because that's supposed to calm people when they're upset. The air is cold, but not pleasantly so, crisp to the degree of granular and carries the faint scent of pollution. It does not calm him at all. Calm down, go home. Take a shower. It doesn't take long for him to be back at the house, and although he'd have liked for more space between his departure and return, he wants to get drenched even less, though his clothes are heavy with all the rain they'd soaked up by the time he's nearing his house. The only part of him untouched by the rain is his hands, reminding Izuku of the gloves snug on his fingers. It should have been hard to ignore the ill-fitting RBB protecting his hands, but he'd gone most of the morning either forgetting that they were there or postponing their removal to a nebulous later. The hum on his fingers is subtle, having built intensity through the day. I thought it would be gone by now, he reflected, a deep frown on his face as he pushed past the weathered welcome mat at the door and inside the Midoriya household. His attention stuck to Inko, sitting on the living room's blazing red couch, only a couple dozen feet away. She'd noticed him come in, back straightening like an employee whose boss had just caught them slacking off. Before she can say anything, Izuku interjects, "Shower," pointing up. Inko gives him a strained look as he disappears. He tries not to think about anything as he throws his clothes off, not bothering to even check his reflection as he cranks the temperature up to 11 and relaxes, easing all tension from his mind. He mostly succeeds in swatting himself away from bothersome topics whenever they come to mind, occasionally getting caught up in pointless wondering. It feels like he's only been in for a few minutes when there's a quiet knock at the bathroom door. He's about to holler for Inko to leave him alone, but she shouts first, "Aizu? Honey, you've been in there for 5 hours? Are you okay?" How many hours? He screeches, fumbling to turn off the shower with his pruned fingers. 5 dash. Inko repeats, seemingly just as confused as Izuku. Izuku jumps out of the shower basin, snatching a towel from the nearby shelf, drying himself with a few concise swipes. He dresses quickly, throwing on a t-shirt and shorts, happy he'd washed them the night before. Izuku also adds a new pair of disposable blue gloves to his outfit. He hardly realizes he's doing it until they're already on, and by that time, it would be a waste of energy to take them off. Inko is waiting downstairs for him, will bring over a pot of frankly mouth-watering food. If this were a cartoon, Izuku would have been floating towards the smell. "Izuku!" She chimed, flashing a smile. "You're here. Oh, are you hungry? I'm making pork katsudon, your favorite. If you're hungry in the meantime, I put your leftovers in the fridge. I didn't want it to go bad, and you really shouldn't leave eggs out, you know. It would be a shame to have such a nice breakfast go to waste and... Inko trails into a sigh. "Do you think you could sit down? Just for a minute. I know you have important things to do, but could we talk? You've been really distant this morning, yesterday too. If there's anything you want to tell me or think you should talk about, don't be afraid to open up." Izuku gulps and approaches the living room, taking a seat on the sofa closest to the kitchen. The creases on Inko's face smooth over, and the grip on the spatula in her hand loosens slightly. Sorry if it felt like I was avoiding you. I wasn't trying to. I guess, I dunno, I'm sorry. Everything's been a little weird lately. Inko nods like she knows what he's talking about the strangeness. Is it because of your last hero adventure? Did something happen? Well, I tried to ask the receptionist and your teacher, but they weren't very eager to blab about the whole deal. Kinda. He admits, trying hard to avoid getting caught up in the memory of Chisaki. Do you want to talk about it? Inko offers, pausing with a bottle of soy sauce in her hand. Instead of answering the question, he pivots, asking if she needs help with dinner. Inko denies him, the dinner's almost ready, and she's not letting him off that easily. Izuku sighs, his eyes glued to the floor. It's not anything important. Everything worked out okay in the end. At least the girl we were trying to save is okay. Izuku relents, lips curled into a stinging frown while Overhaul's taunts reintroduce themselves into his thoughts. Inko raises a brow, repeating, "Girl?" Her mind has rocketed into deep space, going places man was not meant to explore. Yeah? No, it's not like that. She's 9. Izuku protests, being extra firm as to demolish any trace of a weird idea in Inko's head. Inko pauses for a second. Oh, wait, hold on, what were you saving her from? Izuku chews his lip, his first encounter with Eri and Overhaul in the alley coming to mind. A villain. He sounds awful, hurting a child. I just don't understand how people can do that sort of thing, Inko says, adding some more spice to the food. Well, he wanted a quirkless paradise. I guess he thought he had to hurt her to get that. Izuku rubs the back of his neck, his nerves spiking. And not that I'm excusing it or anything. He should definitely go to jail, and everything wouldn't even be better if we were all quirkless, but in his mind, he must have thought he was making things better. No wonder you've been strung out lately. That's the thing with most bad guys, Aizu, they don't think they're bad guys, but you've got to stop them anyway. I'm just glad he can't cause trouble anymore. Izuku averts his eyes, taking an awkward breath as the air turns stiff. Inko, noticing the shift, drops the spatula, a disbelieving frown sharp on her face. Aizu, don't tell me he's still out there. He is, Izuku grumbles. That's the worst part, we didn't catch him. How many heroes did you have with you? No, Even if you only had a few decent pros, they could have probably done it, and you're no slouch with your quirk either. Did someone drop the ball? Inko gapes. Izuku shakes his head firmly. Other than me, no. Everyone did their best. He was just too strong. Izuku. Stop that nonsense, I'm sure you tried your best. What was his quirk? Overhaul, Izuku answers grimly, the ability to freely disassemble and reassemble matter at the touch of a finger. Inko blinks, taken aback. That's certainly quite the quirk. Izuku, I don't think you have to feel bad about not getting him. But first that Shigarini fellow and now this man? I can't believe you keep running into these people. Izuku feels strangely offended at Kai being mentioned in the same breath as Shigaraki, but shakes himself free of the emotion in the next breath. I don't know why I have such bad luck when it comes to this stuff, but at least Overhaul hasn't held me at hand point in front of a Macy's? That's good, right? Inko gives him a sobering glare. No, Aizu, it's not. These men are dangerous, and you don't know how close they might be. For all we know, they could be at our door. Izuku opened his mouth, halfway through formulating a response on how unlikely it was that a Yakuza boss would follow him, when the universe itself, through an act Izuku could only reason as divine maliciousness, rang the doorbell. A mortified chill settles over both Inko and Izuku. Suffocating silence followed in the wake of the sound. Inko and Izuku gulp, both stricken with fear. Izuku set his teacup down on the table, every muscle working together to make the move as quiet as possible. I'm going to look through the peephole in the door, and if I describe the person there as either a guy with a bird mask or a crusty guy, go upstairs and use the fire escape, I'll be fine. The bell rings again. Izuku feels sweat build on his brow. Just go. Inko's lips quiver, but she doesn't argue, scrambling to the edge of the stairwell, awaiting Izuku's response as he goes to the door. The journey is only a couple feet, but each step seems monumental. They could be the last steps he ever takes. Through the peephole, Izuku can see nothing but darkness. Initially, Izuku is scared whoever is at the door must have anticipated his course of action and covered the peephole, but the color shifts, revealing itself to be hair, long, curly and black. Attached to it is a tired but familiar face. Eraserhead. Isn't that your teacher? Inko whispers from the other end of the room. Teacher? Izuku echoes with a thick confusion. Thankfully, it doesn't last long, maybe less than a second before Izuku shakes himself, snapping back to reality and reminding himself of the obvious fact that's what Aizawa is to him, a teacher. Izuku opens the door, reassuring Inko with a quick, "Yeah, it's fine." Eraserhead looms in their doorway. Then, without so much as a hello, he pushes his way in, head swiveling around as his eyes search their home like it has the potential to be a crime scene. What are you doing? Izuku bristles, less than impressed by the hero's uninvited entrance. Checking up on the well-being of one of my students, Eraserhead answers, eyes trailing to Inko. His gaze changes, almost seeming relieved, like Inko being in her own house is even remotely strange. Is that all? Inko asks. If her tone is anything to go by, it seems she also isn't thrilled by Aizawa's sudden appearance. Mostly. Midoriya, since you're missing school here? Then, the hero reaches into his pockets. He offers Izuku a stack of papers and some keys. Izuku stares at the items for a moment, taking much too long to realize they're for him. Oh! Izuku exclaims, snatching the papers with a nervous speed. Thank you. For the heads up, I mean. And the He flips through them. Keys. He finishes bitterly. I thought it prudent to give you today's and tomorrow's assignments ahead of time. Make sure to have the assignments on my desk by Friday. Sure. And with that, Eraserhead is off, making some half-formed, socially inept goodbye. Inko starts ranting once he's out of earshot, complaining about the callousness of a man pushing unnecessary work on her son after just leaving the hospital. Izuku dismisses it, explaining to her that he's always like that, and arguing that he's not a bad teacher. It's hard to convince her though, as Izuku isn't good at hiding how annoyed the situation made him. They agree to drop it once the food is almost done, neither wanting to drag the negativity into dinner. Izuku sets the papers and keys aside for later so he can help set the table. As always, the food smells and looks delicious. Izuku's utensil shakes in his gloved hand. He's starving. He closes his eyes, his stomach screaming to just eat it already. Pork katsudon is his favorite. Izuku chomps down on a mouthful, memories of the savory flavor causing his mouth to water. His chewing slows as the taste registers on his tongue. It tastes completely different than he remembers. Not bad, not necessarily, just different. Really, really, really different. He's aware of a lot more of the fat on the cutlet. He gets the feeling that the cut of meat she used might not have been the highest quality. He swallows, not entirely sure how to feel about the dish. Is this what happens when people don't eat food for a while? Does it taste all strange? The rest of dinner goes similarly, but Izuku, to the relief of his appetite, and Inko, manages to scarf down a bowl. He's fine for maybe the first couple of minutes after eating, but he begins to get paranoid. What if the pork was bad? Or undercooked? What if the dishes didn't go through a thorough wash? Or something else horrible that he just doesn't know about yet? What if? Izuku ducks inside the bathroom. He leans against a wall for support, looking at the toilet and considering making himself hurl to be safe. Then, it occurs to him, what the heck am I doing? The food isn't poisoned. Inko wouldn't do something like that in a million years. I feel fine, physically at least, if I ignore the weird thing with my hands, but that's not the point. A flurry of self-directed criticisms fires toward himself, asking everything from why he reacted so badly to what on earth is wrong with him. It's just his imagination. He's always been good at overthinking, and he didn't exactly get a lot of sleep tonight. Still, he can't help but feel a little concerned. It's not like him to get so paranoid over nothing. A bread sigh makes its way out of his throat. He steps over to the sink, removing his gloves so he can wash his hands. His eyes flicker to the bathroom mirror, and Izuku pauses on his reflection, blood running cold. Why are my eyes yellow? Standing in the middle of Inko's bathroom, staring at the mirror, is Izuku. His eyes, still stained that awful gold color, are locked to his face, scrutinizing every atom of his reflection. This has to be because of Kai, right? Why hadn't anybody said, wait? Inko did say something about his eyes when she drove him home from the hospital, didn't she? At the time, he hadn't exactly been listening, so he just told her he was fine. He thought she just meant he looked tired or something. Not this. He feels like the biggest idiot ever. Kai didn't change anything else, right? Izuku isn't sure if he can even tell. He's been staring long enough that he isn't sure he'd be able to tell if his mouth was suddenly reversed. Izuku hadn't slept much last night. Again, he was consumed by thoughts of Kai and his quirk, alight with nerves and hives as he dusted down his entire room for the second time, unable to stomach the idea of sleeping with so much filth around. And how does Kai even bring people back after the overhaul? His quirk is just manipulate matter, so it seems safe to assume he doesn't have a built-in function to restore a person the exact way they were before the overhaul. Wait, no, that's actually really bad, because Kai might have brought me back from my memory. Which means I'm Kai's version of Izuku? Oh dear gosh, let's not think about that. Today, it is 9:15 a.m. Today, Izuku will return to the dorms. He's already in Inko's car, scrunched up in the back seat with a half-empty box of RBB gloves cradled in his lap. Any conversation is sparse. Inko and Izuku only share a few words every couple of minutes. That's fine though. Izuku's mind is somewhere else entirely, ricocheting between recent hero-villain fights, things he sees out the window, and the fast-approaching meeting with his classmates. His leg bounces up and down restlessly as he creates scenarios for how their future meeting will go. Despite the butterflies in his stomach, there's a smile on his face. He remembers being this nervous the first time he entered 1A, cautiously optimistic about all the new people he'd meet, and so determined to make this year different. His memories of then are rosy with nostalgia, though he was really going through it at the time. All that pressure, what with the new quirk and new school. The shadow of the UA dorm menaces above their car, the building casting a mighty shadow over them as they park. The lighting makes the dorms look so much more intimidating than they should. Izuku stills his bouncing leg, trying his very best to restrain his nerves and look presentable. It's not as if he's making a first impression, but it sure feels that way. He even put on a nice sweater and tried to comb his hair, something he'd have to get back to. He couldn't even get halfway through before he had to stop out of fear the comb would get lost forever. Izuku gulps, saying his brief goodbye before hopping out of the car. Inko lingers behind him for a few moments, her eyes focused on Izuku, but she seems to be looking past rather than at him. Another awkward goodbye wave and she sparks to life, driving off with a smile that's a little too wide to be real. Once she's gone, guilt bites at him. He'd been distant with her most of yesterday, and refusing to eat breakfast was also pretty rude, not to mention the way he overreacted to being woken up. He'll apologize once he's settled back in. For now, though, he brings his attention to the dorm building, trying to ignore the knee-weakening anxiety biting at him. Act normal. Act normal. Act normal. His confidence evaporates the closer he gets. Once his hand is at the knob, he's reciting All Might quotes to keep himself from melting. His gloved hand shudders, performing a weak excuse for a knock on the reinforced wood. There's no answer. He'd be surprised if Jairu could hear him if she was plugged into the door. Izuku takes out the replacement keys Eraserhead gave him yesterday, sliding the metal into the keyhole and turning. The door opens with a stiff click, and Izuku pushes his way inside. The interior of the commons is expansive, reaching out a couple hundred feet in both directions. The shaded windows bring almost no light in from the outside, leading Izuku to flip the switch on the near side of the wall. Light spills from the fixtures, bathing the room in a pallid white. Couches and tables clog the floor, chairs are strewn haphazardly next to them, and the oversized TVs on the walls are off, reflecting a blurry shadow image of the room. Izuku drags his fingers over the slightly weathered wall, taking his hand away and examining it after a couple steps. He's glad he was wearing gloves. Who knows how many germs he just picked up? It's disgusting. He feels like he's trespassing. The whole area is unfamiliar, even the sparse signs of life, like the occasional item of clothing or empty food wrapper, serve only to further alienate him. He's completely disconnected. No emotion, as if he were observing the home of strangers. His memories disagree, but the feeling doesn't fade as he wades deeper into the building. Where is everybody? He wonders, popping his head in and out of every other room with an increasingly confused expression. Room after room, he finds nobody. He's just about ready to call it a day and retire to his room when, turning the corner into the upper-level commons, he finds someone. Their back is turned to him, he can just barely see their maple hair sticking up from the couch. They're curled, snug in a pastel pink blanket like it's the only thing keeping them from flying away. The TV in front of them is blaring some type of cheesy reality show with a woman in gold chains showing off oversized stacks of cash. Izuku physically scoffs at the show, but he's sure the TV drowned out the noise. Izuku leans over the couch cushion from behind, plastering a nervous, but wide, smile on his face as he exclaims, "Uraraka!" The reaction is instant and fiery, like a chemical explosion. Her eyes swell, desperately stretched as though she'll need every centimeter of vision to avoid some terrible fate. She stumbles back, her panicked fumbling throwing her to the floor. She would have kept going if she hadn't gotten tangled in her blanket. Uraraka's chest heaves, escalating up and down like the air will run out if she doesn't breathe at all right now. Her hands, white-jointed from strain, grip handfuls of the carpet. As if that wasn't enough, her face is gnarled and sharp, stabbing towards him like a knife. It's an accusation that he did something. What that something might be. He's less than clueless. There's a solid 10-second gap where Izuku is grasping at straws, his brain concentrating 120% plus ultra power to figure out what to do. It's not every day he gets a reaction like that to, "Hi. Are you all right?" He asks softly, drenched in worry for his friend. Uraraka blinks, it's the first time she's done so, eyes shooting to the floor as she covers her mouth. Most of the intensity washes off as her shoulders fall, finally strangling a hold over her composure. She nods, silent and unwilling to look anywhere within a foot of him. "Oh, I'm sorry for surprising you." He apologizes, still awkward, not really knowing what else to say to that. Izuku tries not to feel offended, insisting that she must have a good, rational reason for treating him like this, and all will be back to normal soon. But I just wasn't expecting anybody to be here, she says, muting the TV with a shaky hand. Why? Uraraka gulps, still refusing to meet his eyes. It's a school day. Izuku gives himself a mental kick. How did I not realize that sooner? Everyone should have been there, not here. I wanted some space. Uraraka trails off with a choke, and her forearm goes to her eyes, wiping away tears. Tears? No, I understand. I get it. He pauses. Don't people usually stay home when you're not sick, are you? That's not why you're home, right? He asks, backing away with his hands already reaching for his shirt, ready to turn it into a makeshift mask at a moment's notice. It's a little too late to stop the hives, though, and his hands ache when he thinks of how close he's gotten. Uraraka stares, eyes hovering over the faint red bumps peppering his skin. No. She answers slowly. Oh, that's good. Sorry, I just had to make sure. But you're not feeling well? Emotionally, I mean? Because of the raid, isn't it? Izuku knows he's right when she tenses, and he takes it as his cue to sit on the couch next to her, now assured that she isn't diseased. She doesn't get up and join him, though he'd certainly left enough space to. I feel it too, the pressure? The shy Hasaikai felt so much more threatening than the other villains. They weren't even after us, we were just doing our work studies, and then, suddenly, boom, we're being smacked across the face by the whole, heroism is a life or death job. I don't know how bad it got for you. But for me? I could have died there. I really could have died there. I got caught in Kai's hands, I couldn't move or anything, and nobody was around to help. I thought I was dead. But then I wasn't. Alive. And that's what's important, right? I might not have been able to defeat Kai, but as long as I'm alive, I can get better. Uraraka, at some point during his talk, has decided to look at him. A laugh sanded from her throat, humorless and dry, almost painful sounding. You're alive. Alive. I guess that's because of me. You say that like it's a bad thing? Izuku asks, trying not to feel offended. He expects an apology, deserves one, but Uraraka only denies it with an unenergetic shake of her head. Well, let's be the bigger person here. Then, did you at least see what Kai did to me? Well, I think he might have left some nerve damage on my hands, and you definitely noticed, but my eyes are kinda the wrong color. It's probably pretty off-putting. I know I was freaked out when I saw it. I think it's some kind of a reminder. He sighs tiredly. That's kind of messed up, but it's the only reason I can think of. Uraraka's mouth presses into a tight, stilted line. A reminder, she starts to quiver. I didn't see anything. That's not the face of someone who hasn't seen anything, Izuku observes. You really don't know, do you? She asks, the weight of her voice giving way to an airy emptiness. Know what? He says, not really liking all the mystery here. Uraraka narrows her eyes and she looks away. Nothing. Okay, this is starting to get frustrating. Come on, we both know it's not nothing. You wouldn't have stayed home over nothing. Fine, she snaps. You want a reason? Sir Night Eye died this morning. That's all that runs through Izuku's head, a simple, huh. His mouth remains slightly open. Sir Night Eye, one of the top pro heroes in Japan, a man who was one of All Might's best friends, just died. And any moment now, a wave of righteous fury will wash over him. Izuku can picture tears forming in his eyes. He sees himself tearing up, almost feels himself say something about Mirio. He waits for it. And waits. And eventually, he realizes that if he goes another second without reacting, he's going to look like he doesn't care at all. Oh, Izuku says, internally cringing when he hears how soulless he sounded just then. That's terrible. Uraraka stares, all the heat and anger gone from her face. A chilly uneasiness creeps into her frame. She pulls her limbs in tighter, withdrawing a little more. Izuku can't exactly blame her. He didn't expect to do this either, but here they are. Izuku's eyes snap all over the room as he tries to find some damage control. I'm so sorry. I must be having a hard time imagining that he's actually. You know. But before he can get 2 more words out, Uraraka stands up, undoing her blanket in her arms. Nope. Nah, this isn't happening, she says, teary eyes already focused on the nearest exit. What? Where are you going? Izuku demands, standing up as well. He reaches his hand out to her slightly, barely more than a twitch of movement, but Uraraka doesn't seem to take kindly to the gesture, flinching like Izuku might pull a gun. Is she that shaken from the raid? He knows Night Eye died, but what does Izuku have to do with that? I'm tired. It's a weak excuse, and they both know it, but Izuku doesn't know what to do about it. He could try to force her to stay and talk, but he thinks that would probably have the opposite effect. It's the same thing if he tried to follow her. He can't imagine either ending well. But he also doesn't want to roll over and let her leave, although it's shaping up to be the best option. Oh, okay, he relents, about to continue with something like, take your time, or, I hope you feel better, but she's already vanished. About a minute after she's gone, he sighs, checking the clock on his new phone. 9:52 a.m., he repeats, sullen. Only 5 more hours until everyone is home, and he's got no idea how to fill the time. He looks at the muted TV facing him, briefly considering watching something. The idea evaporates almost as fast as it occurred. No, he sneered, I should be training, not wasting my time watching garbage. Kai was still out there, and if he was willing to scorch a permanent reminder of that fact on Izuku's face, there wasn't really a question of if Izuku should be preparing for his return, but how to train for it. Firstly, clothes. Sweaters are nice, but he's going to need something more sturdy to work in. Izuku makes his way to his room, somehow managing to get lost in a building he's been living in enough time for to be embarrassing. Eventually, though, he manages to find his way there, and the sense of triumph is overpowering as he kicks in the door. Instantly, Izuku is blinded by a sparkling kaleidoscope of red, white, blue, but mostly yellow. He covers his eyes with his sleeve with a hiss, inching towards the curtains. He yanks them closed, still partially blind from the influx of light. It takes about 20 seconds of furious blinking for the world to stop looking like an American slush. The first thing he can make out is a 30 by 10 poster of All Might, plus the other top 10 heroes in the country, all posing in ways that used to look a lot cooler. Izuku stares at the obnoxiously large poster, seriously asking himself if he always owned it. Of course, he did. That's a silly thought. He specifically remembered putting it up the first day he moved in. Heck, he even remembers how the tacks holding it in kept falling off, and how he dropped one, lost it, and skewered himself with it months later. Of course it was his. According to everything he knew about himself, it made sense. Still, he couldn't shake how inexplicably not his he found it. He was convinced that he'd never decorate a room like this. He preferred simple, sparse decorations, cool and neutral colors, pleasing and easy on the eyes. Izuku brushes it off with a shake of the head. He shuffles through the drawers of hero merch for workout clothes, his face slowly falling into abject disgust the more he digs. What the hell kind of fashion is this? He plucked out a bright, puffy orange vest, holding it in the air with a level of disdain so great he was surprised the vest didn't implode on itself in shame. Orange and green? Geez, what was he thinking? Izuku folded the item, setting it down on the floor. At which point he realized he was going to have to sweep if he planned to sleep tonight. Izuku continues the process of purging his dresser, folding everything he wanted to get rid of in a neat stack on the floor, and transferring everything he wanted to wash into a pile on his bed. Most of the keep pile was either tasteful plain clothes or bombastic all-might tees, with very little in between. The toss pile consisted entirely of clothes that were a waste of resources. Their very existence was a testament to the fact that some people in this world wasted air when they breathed, and their only use would be when they died and became food for vermin. But that's a bit extreme? Most of the work was already behind Izuku, and it only takes a couple more minutes to weed out all the remaining trash. Next, he gets a sizable bag and tosses them inside. The last and final step is to actually throw it away, meaning he has to visit the dumpster around back. Izuku stares at the bag, a deep pit of dread forming at the prospect of going anywhere near a giant filth bin. He takes a breath, and, I really need to stop doing that when I'm upset because it's not helping. Don't get upset. It's fine. It's fine. This is fine. I will take this bag to the trash and I will not freak out over it. I can do this. Izuku repeats the last part as he hoists the bag over his shoulders. He marches, chest puffed with faux confidence until he's outside. Time stretches absurdly on the way there, and he's surprised he didn't puke from stress alone by the time the dumpster is in view. Dumpster, saying the word in his head makes his skin crawl, every inch alight with a million bristles. He's hot too, almost feverishly so. Izuku grips the bag tighter, and he wonders if it would be so bad to come back another time. He's deluding himself though, he knows that if he leaves now, he's never coming back. Unfortunately, he doesn't know if he can walk the remaining 20 or so feet without collapsing into a semi-lucid fugue state. If only he had a stronger version of Inko's telekinesis. Izuku nearly slaps himself for thinking that. He has one for all, for crying out loud. Izuku readies, adjusting both himself and the bag so he can get a clear shot. He suches on one for all, but midway through his throw, his eyes contract and his concentration shatters. The bag misses its target, dinking off the metal before slumping against the wall of the dumpster. Izuku would have been irritated had he not been focusing on the sparks of black-purple energy coursing off his body. He ramped up his percentage of one for all, dumbstruck when the black-purple lightning intensified. Izuku blinks, physically jolting himself, but the color didn't change back to that signature light green energy he's grown so used to. Izuku doesn't know what to make of it. Not at all. He needs to talk to All Might ASAP. Izuku mentally kicked himself before suching one for all off. His earlier plans to train reintroduce themselves, but it seems like a bad idea now. If something is wrong with one for all, he doesn't want to accidentally hurt anyone else, or himself, with it. After all that effort, Izuku expected his room to have looked neater. He lingers in the doorway, staring at the eyesore that is his room, and he realizes he has a very, very long way to go. Izuku sighs, grumbling about how dirty everything is as he retrieves a couple more trash bags, filling them with whatever benign garbage is lying around. The merch goes in a different pile, he doesn't know what to do with it. And it's not that he doesn't like it anymore, most of these are limited edition, he'd rather break his back than part with them, but staying up isn't an option. Actually, he thinks that a much better home for them would be in his closet. He can always get more places to store his clothes, and now that the trash is gone, he can't think of anything else to do with the room. Cleaning is time-consuming work, Izuku learns. It requires a thorough eye, patience, and determination, never settling for anything less than perfect. He's not even finished when the faint chatter of his classmates returning home fills the air. He stops anyway, he's tired and close to bursting with anticipation to finally see his friends. Izuku rushes downstairs, making a pointed move not to touch the railing. Who knows how many germs are left there? He almost falls because of it, though. Class A piles in through the main door, some already settling in after a tasking day at school. Izuku tries not to map out the germs they're spraying around, mostly succeeding as he hops up to Ida and Todoroki. Izuku keeps a solid 6-foot distance, giving them both a sunny, hey. Their conversation breaks when they see him, pleasant surprise influencing their usually stoic faces. Todoroki greets him with a reserved, but not cold, hello, while Ida responds with a formal, good afternoon, Midoriya. At the mention of Izuku's name, several other classmates perk, becoming aware of his presence. Oi, the nerd's back? Barks Bakugo. Kiroshima says a simple, wary, hello. Wary, just like Aizawa, like Tsukachi, even Uraraka this morning. However, the wariness isn't as hostile as Aizawa's, not as grief-stricken as Uraraka's, and not as suspicious as Tsukachi's. It's almost a normal expression to you, who's right next to him, just nods, a simple, welcome, followed by a croak. He receives a few more waves before Mina walks up to him, hand at her chin with a puzzled expression. Midoriya? What's with the contacts? Not to knock your style or anything, but yellow isn't really your color. Contacts. He repeats, his mind taking a moment to catch up with her comment. Contacts? Oh no, they're not contacts. He clarifies, not sure he actually made anything more clear when all faces in the room scrunch in confusion. Then what are they, Deku, jaundice? Bakugo mocks, earning a glare. Izuku crosses his arms, bristling at the idea. I'm not sick, it's not that bad. I think one of the villains I fought during internships left my eyes like that as a reminder. I don't really want to talk about it. A moment of silence follows, the atmosphere stiffening to the point of seizure. Wow, Mina blurts. That's Fed. Izuku laughs uncomfortably, mumbling in agreement. And you're sure it's permanent? Ida asks, stepping closer, forcing Izuku to back up with a forced grin, barely resisting the urge to cover his mouth and nose with his shirt. Yep. They don't seem to notice he's uncomfortable. Someone else, Mina, also comes closer, a devious spark lighting her eyes. But you fought all those Yakuza? And the boss? What was it like going toe-to-toe with such a crazy quirk? Izuku averts his eyes, failing not to think back to the last moments of the raid or feel the pain it brought. It was pretty intense, I guess. I don't really have anything else to say, sorry. Come on. Mina pouts. That's not the face of a guy who doesn't have much to say. Kiroshima places a firm hand on Mina's shoulder, dragging her backwards. Brothers, he says, I get that we're all hyped about our internships, but Overhaul is a scary guy. Mito might not want to talk about it. Izuku soothed the back of his neck. Thank God. Well, it's not just that. We've seen villains before. We've fought villains before a lot, but these guys weren't really what I expected when I took the entrance exam. I must have gotten used to Shigaraki's style of villainy. The whole, kill all might, destroy all heroes, kind. Easy? I don't really have to think about them. Ida, who's sitting across from Izuku, takes a contemplative second to assess. What about Stain? Izuku blinks twice. What about him? Ida looks at Izuku like he wasn't the one bringing up random things. He had an ideology. I don't think it's fair to say there's never been a villain that's more thought-provoking than Shigaraki. Izuku shrugs. Well, I guess. But I meant Kai's solution. If we hadn't gotten Eri, I think he might have gotten what he wanted. Stain wasn't ever going to fix heroism, whatever that means, by killing random people. Ida nodded. Of course, violence is never a good solution to social problems. And he missed the point, but that's all right. He can explain. Bakugo interrupts with a scoff, or not. Oi, nobody tell glasses he's trying to be a hero. Ida folds his arms over his chest, and he ruffles like a bird. Heroism isn't even comparable. We defend people and enrich our communities. By roundhouse kicking guys in spandex? Bakugo added. In a world with villains, heroes are a necessary part of life dash. Because we roundhouse kick guys in spandex. Not all heroism is violent. Please, if heroism was community service, I'd be a QMA fighter. Just because you became a hero for bloodlust, doesn't mean there aren't some of us who joined for more noble reasons. Pushed, like you? Bakugo forces a hoarse chuckle. Nice humble brag. Very subtle. Hey! Izuku shouts, interrupting before anyone else can. Guys, does it really matter why? All that matters is we're here now, and we're going to end up helping people, no matter what our reasons are. Ida purses his lips. Of course, I was only concerned that Bakugo, even after going to UA for so long, still seems more interested in violence than our real job. The Bakugo in question responds with a thoroughly unimpressive middle finger. Izuku nearly says something about respect, but Bakugo is too dense to listen, even if Izuku is completely correct. Well, Ida, before we were interrupted, we were talking about Stain, weren't we? Izuku asks, opening the door to a conversation he actually wants to have. The boy nods, saying, yes. Going after individual problematic heroes isn't a good way to solve corruption, and neither is, excuse me, Midoriya, could you remind me of what Chisaki wanted to do? Izuku opens his mouth, prepared to explain, but another voice beats him to it. Quirks. The unmistakable sound of Uraraka's voice rings from the series. Overhaul wanted to destroy quirks, she clarified, sounding completely drained. She drags herself closer, moving past them without a single glance before disappearing into the kitchen. Izuku stares at the space she left, a small gnawing concern eating a hole in his stomach. Destroy quirks. Someone, Izuku didn't bother checking who, said, "Can you even do that?" Izuku blinked back to reality, answering, "Yeah, he made a serum for it, but only had a few fully realized cures dash." Cures? Prods Ida, eyebrow quirked at a sharp angle. Izuku short-circuits for a second, confused too. Kai called them that. Sorry, I guess, cure, is just easier to say than quirk erasing bullet. Izuku chuckles, nervous. He's not sure if he actually remembers Kai ever calling them that, but it seems like something the villain would say. Wait dash, blurts Mina. Didn't he have a really strong quirk? Hypocrisy much? Like, dude, you're kind of benefiting from having a quirk, seems super dumb to want to destroy them, Mina says, mocking. Izuku physically bites back the argument bloating in the back of his throat, equal parts confused and disgusted to find it there. That's not a hypocrisy, it defends, having a quirk is something you can't control. In Kai's head, it's probably more like advocating for a disease you've accidentally contracted. It's not that Izuku disagrees with the line of reasoning, because he doesn't, but that isn't the point. Izuku is more concerned that the thought even occurred, and so fast too. Izuku squirms, ignoring a growing dissonance building between him and his classmates, who were now heartily agreeing with her. He continued to watch as they cracked jokes, his composure thinning slightly as he found himself picking at the lip of his glove. Izuku interjects the first chance he gets. Yeah, I guess Kai is pretty awful. I just hope he doesn't get a fan club like Stain. Don't you get it, Deku? Bakugo barked from across the table. If there's one thing people like more than a hero, it's a villain. That's dumb. Shai Hasaikai Compound, the aftermath of the Overhaul raid? PM 2XXX. Hari didn't know the chances for escaping the ruins of the Shai Hasaikai complex, as riddled with heroes as it was. He only remembers waking beside Shin, cradled atop a concrete pillar with neither Kai nor Eri anywhere to be seen. Hari couldn't recall the events past his blackout, but the sizable bloodstain leaking off the pillar gave him enough sense not to dwell. A cursory glance about the area revealed that Hari was not being chased. In fact, there were only 5 heroes lying in the chamber below. A dying hero, a quirkless hero, a hero under the effects of his quirk, and another young one crouched over a 5th, motionless body. It was much too far to see details, but from clothes alone, the 5th body was not any hero he recognized. In fact, the colors reminded Hari of Kai, but there was no scenario where a hero would mourn the apparent death of his boss. The most important information was that the heroes were not pursuing him, and that would not last. Hari dragged himself to his feet, failing to hold back a groan from the sea of pain he was in. Every single muscle, nerve and bone was alight. This was a feeling he knew well, a side effect of Kai's overhaul. He stumbled to the edge of the platform, eyes finding their way to the unconscious Shin beside him. He knew safety was momentary and self-preservation said abandon the man, but Hari thought of Kai first, how upset he'd be if they lost Shin's abilities because of Hari's temporary pain. His limbs were sluggish as he threw the man over his shoulder, quickly realizing that he wouldn't be able to fall from this height without shattering his legs. With one last cautious look, Hari began extending the knife-sharp points of his hair, preparing for a slow descent. He was lucky the heroes were so absorbed dying, or else he'd have surely been caught. Once at the base, Hari scanned the warp chamber for exits. The room held but one, a makeshift rift in the wall caused by the green-haired brat. There would be nothing for Hari there except more heroes, something he couldn't handle in this state. Thankfully, there was a contingency. There always was with Kai. Hari merely hoped it would work this time. Somewhere nearby, there should be a trapdoor. Kai originally engineered it as a panic room for supplies in case of a raid, and it should prove useful now. Hari searches along the floor for the handle, trusting Kai wouldn't have destroyed it, even in the heat of battle. He hears shuffling from just beyond the pillar. A spike of panic shoots up his side, but his sleeve catches on something. Whatever power up there must have been smiling upon him, because it's the entrance, indented in the rock. It's a slight indent, though one only a man with his attention to detail could spot. Among the worn scape, a single patch of floor is ever so gently less weathered by Kai's quirk, and while it's missing the bronze handle it once had, he's sure it's the spot. Hari tries grabbing different sections of the rock. Each unmoving ledge is another fight against his nerves. Heroes could be approaching any second, and he knows the outcome if such a thing happens. Hari denies himself a sigh as the trapdoor folds out, revealing a long, inky tunnel with an old, rusted ladder stretching down into the darkness. The temptation to simply delve in is strong, but Hari thinks of Kai. Why would everything be at peace if Kai was living and free? Perhaps he already escaped. Hari prays that's true, but why is there this sunken cavity in his chest? Hari is used to ignoring his intuition, so much so that it had shrunk to the size of a pin, but, against everything he'd been taught, Hari is already sneaking past Shin's form, approaching the pillar that separates him from the heroes. His years of stealth training serve him well as he inches closer to their location, closer and closer until he's ducked behind a large spike feet away from the group. The two nearest are the Eraser hero and the quirkless one. Eraserhead struggles to move, slow and jerky from the residual effects of Hari's own quirk, but he's not what draws Hari's attention most. Somehow, it's not Pop's granddaughter either, who was embraced by the now quirkless Lemillium, trying desperately to hide her eyes from the limp body of his skewered senior nearby. The thing that causes Hari's heart to stop is not any of that, but rather a mask. Red and gold, half-faced, brown leather clasps hanging limply. It taunts Hari, so close rested to him, but too far to grab unnoticed. There are only two remaining notable figures. The first is a heroine clad in a pink and white costume. She's stiffly fixed on the person below, her face distorted with equal parts grief and fear. Hari finds himself in the same position as his gaze follows her own. He notes the unconscious body's white shoes. Their soles are muddled with a thin coating of blood. Hari sees white gloves, peeking halfway out the pocket of a dark green coat. His eyes are drawn to a white tie, standing out against a wrinkled black dress shirt. He recognized the colors, the clothes, he'd have known them if he was blind, but it's the last detail that he can't stomach. The jacket's purple hood, Kai's hood, frames a head of curly green hair and a boyish, freckled face. Hari failed before the reality-stealing image laid out for him. His legs failed, sending him to his knees. His lungs failed and he was breathless. His years of training under pressure and threat of death meant nothing. Hundreds of questions scraped at him. What does this mean? What happened? How had it been allowed? But there was one that tore through him more than anything else. Will I ever see Kai again? It haunted him like a malicious specter as he slinked away, avoiding a fall at every step despite his stumbling, oafish legs and shattered calm. He tried to think of a time where he'd been through anything like this. The first time he died? The moment Pops entrusted their empire to his brother? When he received news of his brother's death, caused by his own cursed child. Kai, paralyzing Pops, Hari's own father? Those times, as awful as they were, Hari wasn't alone. Kai had been there. Whether or not he'd caused the problem, he was still there, just ahead of Hari, always with a plan, always with orders. Now, Hari had to make his own choice, and he didn't know what to do. Go back, knife and gun in hand, risk getting caught all to do what? Or hide, do the safe thing by time by piece. The choice is dizzying, but Hari manages to move, lowering both Shin and himself into the darkness of the trapdoor. He's not sure what the right choice was, but he hears a sharp hiss in his ears. It calls him a coward. It is Kai's voice. Oh, how he wishes to hear the real sound again. There's nothing quite like the feeling of preparing for school after something big happens. He's putting on gloves, flinching whenever somebody gets close. Still, he tries to stay positive. Don't think about how that. Think about how I'm going to succeed today. I'm gonna do great, and be great, and everything's gonna be great too. Izuku repeats that until he's halfway to the commons and another sound catches his attention. The muffled sound of argument booms from downstairs. His first instinct, well-nourished, is to blame Bakugo, but one of the voices is feminine, and the other clearly belongs to an older, raspier man. Neither of the voices are familiar, and as he gets closer, it's more and more obvious that the commotion is coming from a TV. Cautiously, Izuku peeks around the corner. A few of his classmates struggle to ignore the sound while they walk to and from the kitchen and bathrooms, obviously annoyed and exhausted. Only 2 people occupy the semicircle of couches around the TV, Ida and Bakugo, both leaning forward in rapt attention. Izuku almost did a double take. Sure, it wasn't like they didn't share any interests, though it was difficult to think of anything off the top of his head. The interests they did share were broad stuff, like heroes, and even that would have attracted more people. So Izuku, curious, found himself staring at the TV too. 2 figures sat in a studio. The first was on the left. He must have been the masculine voice Izuku heard earlier. Dark hair, and a generic news anchor face. Izuku glazed over the unremarkable man like water over a stone. The second figure was an old woman sitting to his right, and Bakugo, Ida, and now Izuku were all looking at her. She must have been in her late 70s, and it showed. Her face was weathered, every feature from her cheekbones and chin to her eyes had sharpened over the years. Her hair was long and shock white, tied back in an elegant bun. Everything about her felt spitefully out of fashion, clothes, speech, even how she sat. Somehow, the most uncanny thing about her was the nagging feeling in his head that he'd seen her before. His eyes drifted to the headlines cycling at the bottom of the screen, hoping for a clue. Humorized chairwoman, Hirose Rin, announces her campaign for prime minister. Politics, that explained why Ida was there, but Bakugo didn't usually take an interest unless there was someone to mock. Humorize, huh? He'd heard that before, somewhere, though he couldn't pry anything useful out of it. Izuku tilts his head towards the TV, almost wishing he'd brought something to write on as the bland interviewer shuffles a thick stack of papers, saying, "And you expect that to work? You expect people to find anti-quirk measures appropriate." Anti-quirk? Izuku outwardly frowns. Why is everyone talking about this lately? Quirks are good? Probably. It doesn't matter, they aren't going away, no matter what kind of stuff crazy villains might say, so there doesn't need to be a conversation about it every 5 minutes. Hirose, the older woman, nodded crisply. Everyone knows why society works, Mr. Matsumoto. You ask me how I'll address the concerns of the people, how to counter these quirk extremist ideas. Why are you wasting the people's time? There is an obvious solution. I know it. Your audience knows it. You're the only one asking here, and it's because you lack vision. Humans are animals, and even captive monkeys become feral when their fellow animal is being fed more, and that's all this is, inequality. The interviewer, Matsumoto, huffed. Miss Hirose, that is hardly appropriate. Call me short-sighted for acknowledging reality, but the truth is before quirks people were born disabled, without legs or arms. Would you want everyone to cut off their limbs because we aren't equally lucky? Because that's what you're asking us quirk to do. Right? Exactly, it would be unfair to ask that of someone. Should he write this down in case he has to see Kai again? Of course not. How distasteful. Do not put words in my mouth, and do not pretend to speak for most quirked. Most quirk do not live at the top, they can't move mountains nor leap buildings. They go to work for their family, take care of their parents, and come home to a house they're dissatisfied with. Don't make the mistake of assuming most are like you, sir. The broadcast went dead silent as the man gathered himself, scooping up papers, then giving a sharp glare somewhere behind the set. That's not relevant. You're still asking a lot of people to give up on a part of themselves for what? Some utopian idea of world peace? That's never going to happen. There will still be bad people, exactly the same as before. Quirks don't make villains. Quirks don't make villains? Say you're correct, you've still failed to consider something. Although I've never claimed that immorality will disappear with quirks, don't you think there would be fewer casualties? The tragedy of Kamino Ward could have never happened without quirks, and neither could the Day of White. Do those lives mean less to you than your convenience? Izuku flinches, and so does the crowd. Miss Hirose Matsumoto starts, but she isn't about to let him talk. How much longer do you think people can keep this broken machine running? How much longer do you expect them to? With that, it's clear Hirose won, which is a little depressing, but maybe this can still be salvaged? Matsumoto, the interviewer, it's clear he just doesn't have enough charisma for this, and he gawks, spitting indignant words. Izuku isn't exactly excited to hear what the man has to say next, but the screen sparks black. Someone turned it off? Izuku's eyes immediately fall on Bakugo, both him and Ida staring at him while he fumes. He doesn't really get why Bakugo is mad. That's not weird, though. Bakugo was good at getting mad for no reason. The blonde turns to Ida, who is glaring in return, daring him to say something. Ida is as unamused and unthreatened as ever. Excuse me, I was watching that. Bakugo, as uncaring as ever, rolls his eyes. Yeah? And if should I care? This isn't the only TV in the world. Sides, it was pissing me off. Ida gives Bakugo a bewildered look. Why? What? Do you mean why? Bakugo snarls as if he can't believe Ida's gall to have a different opinion. You're saying that limp noodle of an interviewer didn't bother you? Acting all like that chick was making points when she was probably gonna start talking about death camps next sentence. Ida guffaws. Death camps? That wouldn't be allowed on television. Bakugo, I disagree with her points, but she never said anything about that. I know you can be crass, but that's too far. Bakugo's mouth hung open. Me? You're acting like half those chumps aren't gonna walk out of there with a humorized pin. Bakugo argues, scowling. Izuku was forced to agree with the blonde, though. People really were gonna come away siding with Hirose. Strangely, Ida's stare grew more lost, like he hadn't even considered that. Why would they? He asks, seeming to genuinely want an answer. There's a very simple retort to her arguments. Izuku prays Ida isn't about to go down the same line of reasoning he was earlier. Bakugo, hot-headed as ever, warps his face into a sneer, lacing his voice with lethal doses of patronizing doubt. Simple retort? And what would that be, genius? Maybe it's just too similar to the shy Hasaikai business. Maybe the argument is making him nervous, maybe both, but he just didn't want to hear it. Ida pushes up his glasses and grins smugly. Free will. Even if there was a way to painlessly take away someone's quirk, lots of people wouldn't willingly give them up. To make an entire population quirkless, you'd have to violate their wishes. That's why it is unethical. Geez, can everyone please stop talking about this dash? Izuku shouts, regretting his outburst the instant Bakugo and Ida turn to him. Ugh. Izuku gulps. His throat is sandpaper. Sorry. I walked by a couple minutes earlier. The TV? It was really loud, so I kinda got wrapped in, and I'm kinda burnt out on the whole, discussion. Bakugo rolls his eyes. Are you feeling bad about having a knee-death experience? Poor fucking you. Too bad it doesn't give you the right to boss us around. Maybe I am feeling bad. Izuku adjusts his gloves, distracted from his irritation by the persistent feeling of static on his hands. Look, I just don't want to hear about it. Ida cuts in next. Bakugo, don't be so hostile, and Midoriya, it's alright that you're stressed, but Bakugo and I were having a conversation. I understand that this may be a sore subject, but it might be healthier to continue getting ready today. You still don't have your tie on. Bakugo bobs his head. Who's keeping you here? You can F off whenever you want, Deku. You're not helping. Ida shot a glare towards Bakugo, silently lecturing. Really? Izuku takes a second off from fidgeting with his gloves to soothe his neck. Because I heard you talking. I mean, it's not like it was getting anywhere. I'm trying to diffuse an argument here. We all know how Bakugo gets when he's heated. Yes, well, I appreciate that, but I'm not exactly defenseless, Ida says. Yeah, Bakugo parrots, and now that's settled, you can F off. Like Glasses said, we were talking. Izuku adjusts his gloves again. He didn't know why they'd suddenly become so uncomfortable, though he wasn't about to take them off. It was still more sanitary to have them on. Guys, I feel like things are getting hostile. I was just trying to help, but my mistake, sorry. Whatever Deck. Wait the DMN moment. Did you FNG call me Bakugo earlier? The boy asks with equal parts disgust and confusion. They both stare at each other for a moment, and Izuku realizes he has been calling Bakugo, Bakugo, or calling Kaken Bakugo? Yep, nope, calling him that feels very wrong. It pulls him clean out of his annoyance, though he can't say this uncomfortable, liminal space of emotion is much better. He's really not sure what to say next. He doesn't get the chance to find out, either. The unexpected interruption of a pale, frazzled Kiroshima, who must have been watching the threes exchange from a distance, frees Izuku from having to explain. Izuku expects Kiroshima to latch onto Bakugo like a magnet, but his gaze lands on Izuku instead. Midoriya. He greets breathlessly, looking between Izuku, Bakugo and Ida. Just the bro I was looking for, need to borrow him guys, sorry. Kiroshima then offers a hand, a thin sheen of sweat covers his palm. Izuku inwardly jees, unable to bring himself to take it. It's 100% not clean, and that deeply bothers him, despite his gloves. He awkwardly flickers between Kiroshima's face and outreached hand, hoping the other boy could somehow read his thoughts. Could I just follow you? He says through a tight-lipped smile. Kiroshima distends his hand, awkwardly, wiping it off on his uniform. Alright. Yeah, that's cool, I just thought. The redhead looks to Bakugo, then Ida, and finally Izuku, settling on Izuku's gloved hands. I thought there might be a fight. What? Kiroshima laughs. The relief is palpable in his voice. Yeah, cool. Everything's cool, come on Midoriya. Let's go. Kiroshima backs up, staring at Izuku expectantly. Izuku took a last look at Bakugo and Ida. Bakugo seemed to still be in a daze, while Ida looked just as confused as Izuku felt. He didn't know what else to do and began to follow Kiroshima. He halfway expected to hear, "Shitty hair, get the F back here, I wasn't done with him," or something like that, but it never comes. They don't walk very far, just until they reach one of the quieter dorm halls, where Kiroshima stops, setting himself up against a wall. Izuku stands in the middle of the hall expectantly, arms crossed and guarded. If Kiroshima really thought he was stopping a fight, why take Izuku away? He wasn't doing anything wrong, just trying to help. To him, and anyone with half a brain, they were the ones being needlessly hostile. Kiroshima hadn't been there for the conversation, yeah, but he should have known better anyway. Izuku was a reasonable person, easily one of the least dangerous people in the class. Not to mention Bakugo was right there, baring his teeth like a dog. So, we're here? What is it? Izuku asks, not hiding his annoyance particularly well. Kiroshima opens his mouth immediately, but shuts it just as fast. He pauses, a complicated expression falling over him. I'll be honest man, I was kinda hoping you'd already know about, Aizawa hasn't talked to you yet, has he? What? Izuku echoed, getting a bad taste in his mouth as he started to get flashbacks to Uraraka's conversation yesterday. Know about what? Was Aizawa supposed to talk to me about something? Kiroshima peeks left to right. What was he so worried about? Never mind bro, how are you doing? Izuku frowns. I'm pretty sure you didn't do all this just to ask me how I'm doing. Kiroshima nods. I didn't, but you were seem off. I wanted to touch bases, 'cause I didn't get the chance to talk with you yesterday. A beat of silence hangs between them. Was Izuku really acting that weird? Yeah, there'd been things here and there, but he thought he'd done pretty well yesterday. Except, of course, when he was with Uraraka. Did Uraraka say something to you? It was kind of a long shot, but the way Kiroshima approached him, saying things that didn't make a lot sense, gave him nasty déjà vu. Still, Izuku is surprised when Kiroshima blinks at him, eyes wide as though he'd read his mind. Yeah, she did. But, how did you know? Didn't want to talk with you? Hold on, she did? Izuku gapes hurt. Kiroshima's face falls. Cringing, he replies, shoot, that wasn't the right thing to say, was it? You guys didn't talk things out, or? I guess not, Izuku confirms with a dim shrug. I don't know what she wants me to talk out. Uraraka hasn't spoken to me since yesterday. It was a lucky guess? Not that lucky maybe. She was a mess when we talked. Pretty sure internships are messing her up a lot more than me. Kiroshima nods forlornly. She isn't doing super well, he sighs. You don't have to answer, but what were you bros talking about? I don't think you meant it, but I think something you said really rattled her. Izuku's mouth slants into a flat half frown. Is this about Night Eye? Maybe, answers Kiroshima. She wasn't really in headspace to be talking specifics. What did you say about him? Izuku shrugs. How am I supposed to know? You said it yourself, she's being Sorry, I shouldn't say, but you know what I mean. I'm not perfect, I might have been a little slow to react to his death, but she left right after, so I dunno. Oh, Kiroshima nods, eyes lighting up like Izuku gave him the last part of a 1,000-piece puzzle. Oh, so that's what she meant by that? What she meant by what? I'm glad I could help? But when do you think she'll be back to normal? Her being like this is hard for me. Wish I knew, man, I wish I knew, Kiroshima agrees. Izuku hesitates before pressing more, not wanting to come off as pushy, but the situation was much too strange for him to stick his head in the sand and pretend he didn't have ears. Well, he starts carefully, it's just, it kind of seems like you do know something. Kiroshima goes a little pale. What are you, talking about, bro? Sure, Izuku could be oblivious sometimes, but Kiroshima was practically clubbing him with signs. Do I really need to say anything? You were walking on eggshells around me yesterday, and today you pull me aside for no real reason? Okay, maybe you're just dealing with something, maybe I'm just being paranoid, but that doesn't make it seem like you don't know what's going on. Kiroshima just kind of stares at him, face racked with guilt, but he's not saying anything which makes Izuku nervous. Not that he wasn't before, this isn't exactly the best conversation to have right before school. Oh gosh, how much time does he have before he needs to get going? But can't he catch a break? Izuku opens his mouth to talk again, hoping he can pry something else out of this, but he's interrupted by the insistent sound of the doorbell. Kiroshima's head snaps toward the sound. Maybe it's paranoia speaking again, but it feels like he knows more than Izuku when he quietly says, Midoriya, you should probably go. Why? I don't think I'm allowed to say. But, you know, things are going to be alright. Okay? Because I'm on your team, and you're a manly guy, and if you need someone to talk to, I'm free most days. Oh, okay? I'll keep that in mind. He says, desperately confused as he walks away from the strangest conversation he's had since All Might told him to eat his hair. When he gets to the commons, he sees Aizawa next to the couches addressing Bakugo, Ida, and most of the class actually. The clutch of people makes him uneasy. He's starting to wonder if he'll ever see a gathering as anything different than a cluster of germs. As for Aizawa, there's an orange manila folder tucked under his arm. Izuku can't see a label, but a thin stack of papers peek out from the top. He can make out red marks near the top of the pages, but the text is cut off just short enough to render it illegible. Aizawa notices him just as he reaches earshot. His greeting is a solemn, simple, Midoriya, as if he's about to deliver a cancer diagnosis, which he isn't, right? Throat like sandpaper, Izuku croaks out a weak greeting as well, not daring to mention the ominous orange envelope tucked under his teacher's arm. Everyone else seems to notice the tension as well, shooting both of them questioning looks. I'm going to be needing Midoriya today, Aizawa explains. I'm not sure when we'll be back, but I can't promise to teach today. You mean you're not working today? On purpose? Mina asks, her neon pink skin nearly faded to pastel from how pale it was. Everyone else was exactly as disturbed, including him. They'd all seen the man teach in a full-body cast. If he was missing school to talk to Izuku, he didn't know if he wanted to hear what Aizawa had to say. You'll know tomorrow, try to focus on classwork for now. A lot of you have been slacking since internships. That's not very reassuring, you know, Kaminari chimes. No, it isn't. Aizawa shifts his focus fully to Izuku, his eye bags seeming deeper than a moment before. Come on. Izuku's gaze flickers back to his classmates. They look at him like he's supposed to know what was going on, but he's equally confused. Aizawa is already at the door and waiting. Izuku doesn't exactly see a no-thanks option here. He swallows the knot in his throat, forcing a weak smile. Yep. Let's go. Aizawa turns promptly, disappearing outside. A few people give him worried thumbs-ups as if to say, You got this, Midoriya. He offers an appreciative smile in return before ducking outside. Aizawa is already halfway to his car. Izuku doesn't want to be mean, but the thing is barely a step up from a literal scrap pile. The paint job, a dull navy blue, is chipped at nearly every edge and corner to reveal rust underneath. A thick film of grime has built up around the entire bottom half of the car as well, and as Izuku gets closer, he can make out clothes and trash piled high in the back seat. Aizawa, he's not serious, is he? The man notices that Izuku has stopped and asks, is there something wrong? Like he somehow just doesn't see the massive hunk of literal garbage in his back seat. You don't actually expect me to get in there, do you? Please tell me this is some kind of prank or something. What's wrong with it? Aizawa says, and Izuku is not the weird one here. Are you kidding? He gawks. It's absolutely, don't insult your teacher. It's a bit, dirty, isn't it? You won't be sitting in the back, the passenger's seat is clear. Aha. I guess I don't have much of a choice. He stares at the rusty door and silently thanks himself for putting on gloves this morning. Izuku reluctantly pulls on the handle, hiding a flinch as bits of paint peel off in his hand. The car itself reeks of free breeze and sweat, and he can't hide the GG this time, or stop himself from wondering what kind of bacteria is thriving in there. Aizawa slides into the driver's seat, unbothered, though Izuku couldn't imagine how. Izuku takes off his uniform's jacket, holding it over the lower half of his face. Aizawa gives him a strange look for it, but Izuku doesn't think he'll survive if he's breathing the air in here for too much longer. If asked, Izuku couldn't tell you much about the drive itself. He spends most of it hanging his head out the window and trying not to vomit. He can barely focus on his surroundings, let alone how much time passes. It feels like years, but if he has to give a serious guess, he'll say 40 minutes pass before the car lurches to a stop. Izuku practically flies out, halfway coughing and halfway shuddering. Gosh, I must have caught something, he swears to himself, feverish. Their destination is a secluded park pretty far out of town. There's only 2 other cars in the whole lot, and the smell of smog and city trash has given way to the earthy scent of a forest. Aizawa comes up to Izuku, his bagged eyes tightening. He asks if his car being dirty really caused Izuku's reaction. Fighting a mouthful of nausea, Izuku barely keeps himself from exploding about how delusional he must be to think that's an acceptable way to keep your car. Aizawa, ignorant to Izuku's suffering, continues, and the hives, how often has that been happening? Only when I'm in a pigsty. Izuku muffles a GD, cheerily replying, and not that much. But it is the trash that brought this on? Illogical. But it is logical to keep your car like that? That's fine. Aizawa invites him deeper into the park's greenery, leading him quietly into a secluded section. The terrain had turned almost mountainous, a river flowing freely below them. Aizawa slumps into the bench overlooking the freshwater while Izuku glares at it. Rivers look so clean, but it's a lie, they're not even close to sanitary. Izuku remains standing, trying his best not to touch anything and further contaminate himself. Aizawa has no problem getting comfortable and settles deeper into his rickety bench like he hasn't seen a chair in years. The bags under his eyes are more pronounced, somehow, as he offers the orange envelope he'd been carrying this whole time. What's in here? Izuku asks, taking the folder and flipping it over in search of a label. That's a good question, but we have things to get through first. Izuku nods, reluctant. The hero takes that as his cue, quizzing Izuku on everything from his quirk to his mental state. Have you had any intrusive thoughts? Violent compulsions? Weird dreams? Changing philosophical views? At some point, Izuku isn't having it, no matter what he's about to learn. How could those possibly be relevant? Okay, he interrupts. Didn't we already go through this at the hospital? Whatever this is about, if you're worried I'll freak out, I won't. Midoriya, Aizawa says, cold, I'm going to be extremely clear with you right now, I don't know that, and neither do you. You were already prone to overreaction before. I can't be sure you won't do something unpredictable if I spring this information on you. Izuku opens his mouth, ready to explain why that's unfair and untrue, and list off a host of other problems with what he just said, but Aizawa keeps going. That envelope contains very serious information, Midoriya, but it's something you deserve to know. Izuku rubs the back of his neck, soothing the pain from Aizawa's verbal lashing. Can't you just tell me? Aizawa sighs. Every muscle on his face says he trusts a shredder more than Izuku. Before I do, I want you to read through those papers. Your previous hospital records have a small red mark in the left corner. Your records after internships are marked in orange. Izuku cracks open the folder, and like Aizawa said, there are red-marked papers at the top. If he had to say, they make up just over a third of the total stack. The red ones held X-rays of a cracked skeleton, a bunch of general stuff like height 5 feet 5 inches, SECM, blood type O-. Izuku would recognize his medical information anywhere. That didn't explain the other stack of papers, though. Did the orange-marked ones contain, at first glance, similar things? Yes, there are X-rays, but these don't show any of the damage Izuku had accumulated over his time with One for All. Upon closer inspection, the skeleton doesn't even have a double-jointed pinky toe. Height 5 feet 5 inches, SECM, blood type B-. Despite what Aizawa said, it can't be his information. Maybe it's a mix-up? Izuku flips over a sheet containing fingerprints, and this heart stops. There are 3 stacks of paper in the envelope, not 2, but that's not why his heart is pounding. In the upper left corner lies a gold check that makes his teeth hurt. And these? Izuku stutters. What about the yellow-marked papers? Who do those belong to? Chisaki, Aizawa answers. Izuku snaps the folder closed in an instant, as if its exposed face could infect him. Why are Kai's samples in a folder with mine? He demands, alarm creeping further with each word. Lacking an instant reply, Izuku nearly asks again, but there's not a chance Eraserhead didn't hear him. Midoriya, the hero tries. I'm trying to avoid an overreaction dash. Try me. You've been talking about this big thing for the past half hour. For days it's been nothing but weird, cryptic stuff. Why are Kai's papers with mine? What does this have to do with him? What do I have to do with him? Fine. Eraserhead stresses, forceful, like the last band of his patience just snapped. According to every test we could find, you are Chisaki. Izuku blinks, once, twice, thrice, struggling to process that impossible sentence. Sorry? Izuku stammers, praying, begging he's gone delusional. I don't think I heard you. That doesn't make any sense. Aizawa just sighs, his oppressive exhaustion finally making some level of sense. Nobody knows what happened during the last moments of the raid, but when we found you bathed in your Quirk's energy, wearing Chisaki's clothes with no sensible explanation of why or how. Naturally, we performed tests, just trying to Butte's damage at first, but the doctors found every piece of Midoriya's information completely inaccurate for you. Your blood matches the samples of Chisaki's, your dental records too. We tried comparing your fingerprints as well, not even close to the ones you had, but we did find prints matching yours. There were dozens on the spikes where we fought Chisaki. But what about my scars? I still have scars on my hands. How do I have scars if there's no? They're cosmetic. We did X-rays, you saw them, there's no damage. Aizawa massages his temples, giving Izuku a precious moment of silence. The world won't stop spinning. The ugly, surgery-marred patchwork across his joints and knuckles. Kai didn't have them, but his quirk? Overhaul? He's sure Overhaul could mimic the injury. No, Izuku falters. He wants to ask why nobody told him sooner and scream that he didn't want to know in the same breath. He wants to accuse the hero of being a filthy liar, but it makes some kind of twisted sense, doesn't it? Did Izuku actually believe all the lasting damage he got was a change of eye color? Mirio's quirk is gone. People died. He's not dealing with the League. If Kai had been the one holding Izuku's neck at the mall, Izuku would be nothing more than a stain on the linoleum. But this? Things have been different these past couple days, but he couldn't have assumed that Kai. Izuku digs his fingers into his palms, only to be reminded of the gloves he'd put on that morning. A flash of white gloves and a red-beaked mask taunts him. They're just like Kai's. He wants to tear them off, but what if Aizawa thinks he's trying to? Oh God, Izuku says breathlessly, I think I'm gonna be sick. Everything from the legs he's standing on to the lungs he's breathing with seems tainted, and all he wants to do is crawl out of his skin and leave it there. There has to be some way out of this, something to fix it. Izuku's heart, drumming furiously, slows as something dawns on him. Wait, what about Eri? Aizawa looks at him with agonizing mistrust. What about her? He grits his teeth, every part of his body tensing in a disgusted flinch. No, don't talk to me like that. I didn't mean it like I'd ever even want anything to do with. He shudders. It's her quirk, she can rewind people, right? And you think she could use it on you? Aizawa finishes, unenthusiastic as he completes Izuku's thought. He grins, desperate. Exactly. Aizawa's mouth tilts, clearly unimpressed. I suppose it is possible that she might be able to fix this. But it's also possible that she'd only rewind you back to being Chisaki, considering it's his cells that we're working with. Izuku's face falls with his hopes. No, there has to be some way. Midoriya, I can't imagine what you're feeling right now, but if there's a way out of this, a safe one, I can't see it. So you're not even going to try? I guess that's pretty easy for you to say, isn't it? I've been just running around like an idiot for the past few days, trying to come up with excuses for why everything's different when this whole time I've just been acting more like him. I apologize for not telling you sooner, but we didn't actually know the full extent of this before last night. Everything I mentioned had to be checked. It would have been irresponsible to leave you with incomplete information. Right? That didn't stop the acute sting of betrayal. It would have been better than nothing. You said you've been acting more like Chisaki. Could you tell me what that means? Do I have to? Unfortunately, this is important. Mostly just small things, I think. Obviously, the gloves, and probably really hating whenever someone touches me too. Also being super not okay around gross stuff. And ever since I woke up in the hospital, my hands have felt weird. I kind of wrote it off as nerve damage, but since I don't have any anymore, it's probably Kai's quirk? God, I never want to say that again. Aizawa pauses. That would make sense. To me, it's more surprising that you've managed to keep your original. Izuku shrugs. Yeah, well, I haven't tried using it very much. I know it's still there, but it definitely feels a little different. Different? Aizawa quirks an eyebrow. Different how? It's hard to describe. Like I told you, I haven't used it a lot since, you know? Aizawa looks at him carefully, as if considering if Izuku can handle a little more pushing. We'll have to look into that. Anything else? No. Or maybe... He sighs, head full of static. I think I need some time to process this. Yes, that might be the best option, but there's one issue left. Other than Kiroshima and Uraraka, none of your classmates know about the situation. That's not going to be the case tomorrow. Don't argue, there's no chance I'm changing my mind on this, but in the meantime, I think it would be best if you were to stay home. Izuku's eyes nearly pop out of his head. What? Stay home? But I've already missed like a week. I know that we just talked about me maybe kinda sharing some stuff with a villain, but I'm not evil, I'm not Dash. Midoriya, don't. It's not about you being evil. You nearly threw up over a 30-minute car ride because of a minimal amount of trash in the backseat. While that may not seem like a good enough reason right now, the campus is a much dirtier place. I don't usually like students missing extended PRDS of class time, but until we find a better alternative, you're not going. That's not what you want to hear, but that's the situation we're in. Those words were a nail, and they pierced through the coffin, lodging themselves straight into Izuku's heart. He didn't want to agree. He really didn't want to, but the hero was right. Does that settle everything then? Izuku nods limply. Wait here. You see if I can clear out my back seat. Shai Hasaikai compound, during the Overhaul raid? PM 2XXX. Overhaul took her up here, up to this pillar that stretches into the sky. It was supposed to be his escape. Something happened to Chisaki, and now he's collapsed. His second and third pairs of arms are gone, and the black and white-coated men are in their place. He looks just like he did before taking them into himself, and Eri is sure he'll be fuming over it soon. She tries to stop trembling, but she's so scared. She didn't know what she did, she's not even sure if she did it. All she remembers was a burst of light and fear when she thought of spending the rest of her days in these dark, dingy halls. Overhaul promised not to take away the kind people if she was good, but she messed up and now nobody's safe. She closes her eyes and hopes she's dreaming. She hopes Overhaul won't wake up. She hopes he'll spare even just one of them when he does. She clutches her head, folding in on herself. Messing up is all she can do, but why does everybody else have to pay? Why can't it just be her? But. She grabs tightly on the red cape Lemillion gave her. Why did she think someone could help her? Overhaul always said they couldn't. She hated when he was right. She hated how stupid she was even more, how much it hurt knowing that any second everything would be stained red. Eri could see it already, Overhaul's gloveless hands clutching someone's skin as it peeled away. Underneath the skin, that terrible, sickening red pours freely. She's too wrapped up in seeing it to notice the pair of silvery-toed boots walking up to her. She can't understand the voice in her ear as anything but white noise, either, at least not until she's lifted off the ground into his arms. She can't believe her eyes. It's the green-haired hero, Deku? Their eyes meet, her shocked red and his determined green. In that moment, a strange sensation starts in her chest, one she's never felt before. It's warm enough to still her trembling body, and warm enough to melt her fear too. It only lasted a moment, though. Overhaul was still alive. He was alive and would reach for her any second now. She couldn't stand that Deku couldn't be here. He just couldn't. Eri saw the fight. None of the heroes could win against Overhaul, and any moment he was going to wake up, and he was going to. Eri silently pleaded with Deku to run, but he just looked away. His gaze shifted up to the opening in the hole in the ceiling. Freedom was so close. Bright green pooled around him, his hair and costume lifting gently at first, then more and more and more as the power gathered. They still weren't moving, though not yet. They still weren't safe, and to make things worse, she couldn't see Overhaul laying down past the hero's shoulder. Until she could see him. His glare froze her in place. She'd never seen him so angry. Not even after Grandpa died. His body rose, and with each heaving breath he recovered more and more. He shot his hand out toward them, and they were caught only a moment away from safety. She finally found the will to scream, warn him, but it was too late. "Oh no, you don't." Overhaul growled hoarsely, fingers digging into the hero's neck as he pulled them both to the floor. Eri fell hard. A piece of her cheek scraped off as she narrowly avoided tipping over the edge of the pillar. She made a weak noise as Overhaul's shadow fell over her, hopeless and cold. He shook the hand he grabbed them with, sneering like he'd gotten some invisible dirt on it. Behind him lay Deku, and he wasn't moving. Overhaul took off his other glove. Her limbs seized out of instinct, and her lips trembled uncontrollably as tears once again gathered in her eyes. She just made everything worse, so much worse. "Eri," Overhaul hissed, his entire body shaking with rage. I wasn't going to leave. Let him go, Dash." She sobbed, praying Overhaul would believe her against everything she knew about him. Hoping against the years of evidence scarring her body. Overhaul's scowl only deepened, much to her ever-growing horror. "Do I look blind to you? Because I saw that." He shook his head coldly. "It still hasn't sunken in, has it? The more you struggle, the more people around you get hurt." And he's right. He's always right, but just once, please, can it end here? I'm sorry." She means it, and she tries to make Overhaul understand that. "I'll never try again, don't hurt him." Overhaul stares at her, unfeeling and unmoved as ever. "I'm sorry as well. I didn't want to use such a disgusting specimen to help you learn your lesson." A chill settles into every part of her body. Please not again." Overhaul turns to the still hero, picking him up by his neck. The skin turns white with the strength Overhaul uses. Eri looks into Overhaul's eyes. She's never seen that kind of face on anybody. It's not anger, not even the disgust she's so familiar with, it's almost sadness, but that's wrong too. She's not sure there's a word for it, she's not sure one exists. "A shame I couldn't cure you too." Without another warning, thin, sickening lines appear all over both the hero's and Overhaul's form. The space separating the skin of the hero's neck and Overhaul's hands starts to fade. Dark, bulging veins explode from Overhaul's wrist and snake through every inch of exposed flesh between them. The rope-like veins pull on his still form, greedily and haphazardly combining pockets of flesh into Overhaul's main body. This is what real monsters look like, and Eri closes her eyes to it, unable to watch even one more nightmarish development. No matter how hard she presses against her ears, she can still hear it happening around her. That sound, that unforgivable wet noise, it cracks and squelches and sloshes, and she knows deep in her gut that it's all she'll be able to hear long after this is over. Damp cracking for the rearranging bones, slurping as guts collapse and swell. She's familiar with every unique noise happening around her. Eri doesn't know how much time passes before it finally stops. It feels like forever when the last pops and clicks settle and she hears Overhaul's voice. Disgusting, he spits, jaw snapping into place. Eri didn't want to open her eyes, but what if Overhaul thought that meant she hadn't learned? That forced her to look, and she prayed that it wouldn't be as bad as it sounded. Her eyes twitched open, and her heart hitched when she realized her whole body was engulfed in Overhaul's shadow. She looked up, and he loomed over her, covering the sun and sky with his extra mass. The transformation was a lot like the one before. It still had the same shape, same extra claws sprouting from Overhaul's back, same scalpel-sharp features designed to rip and tear and hurt. She could almost convince herself that it wasn't the hero's body that made up that deformed shape, if it wasn't for the pieces of his costume draped off the arms. The sight burned her eyes, leaving an afterimage that stays when she blinks. Hero flesh. Overhaul stretched his second pair of arms, eyes narrowed in consideration. He flexed the claws one by one, finishing with a short scoff. I was going to gather the rest of my 8 bullets and kill whoever got in my way with your dear hero's hands, but you're lucky these don't suit me. Overhaul took his original left hand, grabbing onto the ugly mound of flesh on his back. Eri winced, preparing for another sight she won't ever be able to forget, but nothing happened. Overhaul furrowed his brow. He impatiently slapped his shoulder again, then again when it had no effect. What? He hisses, why isn't this worky? Overhaul went silent with a jolt, nearly losing his balance as he stumbles. Bright green energy rose off his four-armed form like smoke, burning brighter and brighter by the second. He staggered backwards, his first set of arms clutching his temples. Blood fell from his nails, and thin lines crept out with it. They stretched from his temples to his face, exploding from his arms. Soon, they covered every centimeter of exposed skin, dividing his whole body into tiny, irregular sections. It was the work of his quirk. She'd seen it too many times to think anything else, but the desperate, small look in his eyes told her he wasn't in control of it. And that made her very afraid. The back portion of his body began to swell in patches, the extra flesh blowing up to bulbous sacs before erupting in a spray of red mist. Overhaul howled. Eri didn't know what stopped her from doing the same. She'd never seen Overhaul like this, never afraid. She didn't know what to do, and she hated that more than anything. She backed away as patches on his arms, legs, midsection, neck, and especially his face began to bubble violently. The screaming hadn't stopped through this, but she wishes it had, because it starts bubbling too. It gurgles painfully until she can't say it's even his voice anymore. His body folds in on itself all at once. He's smaller now, his clothes mercifully swallowing most of the changes. His signature red and gold mask falls around his neck, too, no longer fitting his face. Eri wishes she could say the face underneath wasn't familiar, but life doesn't have a habit of being kind to her. The eyes, still a nauseating gold, are pulled wide, framed by tiny freckles and a longer, curly, head of green hair. He's not screaming anymore. The sound is instead replaced by heavy, raspy breaths. His yellow eyes are staring through her now. She doesn't know who she's looking at anymore, but he's barely standing, unfocused and shaking. His hand, one of the two remaining, finds its way back to its head, a patchwork of scars cutting their way across the knuckles and joints. She backed away one last time, but there's no more ledge for her to escape to, and she falls. Eri bolts up in bed, breathing and drenched in cold sweat from her dream. She claws at her head, trying to force all thoughts of that day from her mind. Dimly, she lifts her head to the window of her room. It's dark, but below her she sees lights from the small buildings. Her room is brighter than her old one, but no less lonely. The clock on the wall goes a tick-tock tick. The sun shines gently in the mornings. It's better than her old room, but she wishes she could see Lemillion. Men in gloves and lab coats come twice a day to collect blood. They tell her that her quirk is unstable. They bring in cold needles and small, colorful bandages. They tell her it's to make sure she's safe to see people. They say a lot of things in this new place. They haven't said anything about Overhaul. She promises herself that she will never ask. The hope that she'll see Lemillion again is the only thing that keeps her here. When it's time to draw blood, she squirms, she freezes, she looks out the window at Mr. Blackbird and his nest, out at the buildings below, and the sky above, but she bites down hard on her cheek each time and never ever complains. It's pinchy, but it's nothing compared to the old way. Doctors ask her how she feels often, but she doesn't understand the question. She says okay each time, but she doesn't think that's what they want to hear. Eri is just happy they don't have any punishments for that. The sun's still up, shining on him gently through the window of his bedroom. He burrows his head under the blanket. The static, grainy sensation on his hands digs into his composure. It's impossible to relax now that he knows what it really is. Images of an overhauled landscape push into him, full of razor-sharp stalagmites and specks of red. He can almost see himself standing at the center of a crown of spikes, and it makes him feel sick. Izuku doesn't know how to stop thinking like his life is over. The image in his head of a benevolent, smiling hero just can't fit with Kai. Cold-eyed, frozen-hearted, there was nothing about Kai that wasn't rotten. He was a criminal, a murderer, an abuser, a Yakuza, a psychopath, and now Izuku, who'd never even had the thought to skip class before, found himself a carrier of the very same disease. It just wasn't fair. Because sure, Izuku would sometimes speak too bluntly, wide walk on sidewalks, even fail to hold the door for someone from time to time, but that shouldn't mean he deserved this. Why can't this feeling go away? That's what he wants to ask, but who does he think he's kidding? Everything to do with himself. It makes him feel sick. Opening his eyes, breathing, existing at all threatens a breakout. His eyes aren't his, neither are the lungs, not the skin, not the bones. He wants to stay positive. A smile is what's kept him going throughout his life, but that seems impossible. What would being optimistic even mean now? Oh, well yeah, my body kinda got replaced by a villain's, and I've picked up some of his physical habits after only a few days, but on the bright side at least he's not controlling my body. If I mess up it's completely my fault. And maybe that really is the right way to think about it. I'm still me. Izuku creeps further into his blanket. I'm me, and nothing is going to change that. He tries to leave it that, tries ignoring the thick pit of doubt creeping up his chest. It worms its way into his throat anyway, wriggling like a parasite as it claws at the back of his mouth, yearning for an escape. He clenches his teeth, shutting his eyes tight as he frantically scrapes the beginnings of an unwanted thought from his mind. He ignores it until it's painful, until he can't stand to be curled away with it. I'm me. And if I'm not? Izuku casts aside fistfuls of bedsheet with a tear-choked gasp, sitting up in bed. He wrestles to look at something that doesn't remind him of the situation, but even the lack of decoration in his room makes his eyes burn. He stumbles out of bed and to the door. This is fine. This is okay. I'm okay. He grips the doorknob with white knuckles, trying not to flinch when he's harshly reminded that he's not wearing gloves. It felt like he was touching a pile of sharp, shifting sand, revolting, and he releases the knob, bringing his hands to the sides of his temples, which he feels as well, feels the skin and tissue clumps pulse and pound, and squirm. What was he going to do? Asking the question is hopeless enough. There weren't surgeries or remedies for this, no pills or rest he could undergo to force his body to recover. If somehow he had total control of the quirk blistering under his nails, it wouldn't matter either. Overhaul can restructure, but his body was made up of Kai. There was less than nothing to do, and he couldn't exactly just pretend this wasn't happening. Not anymore, not now that Aizawa knew and was going to tell everyone. As much as he ached for a solution, even something like rewind couldn't turn back time for him. He was stuck like this, flinching at insolent things like doorknobs, and the word insolent being a part of his vocabulary. That's not a word heroes use. That's a villain word that villains use to describe annoying stuff. He can hear Kai's voice in the thought. A deep sense of self-disgust and horror lodges itself in the middle of chest, prying between the bones of his rib cage. What is he going to tell the rest of his class? What is he going to say to Inko? And All Might can't see him like this. What if he asks for one for all back? That scared him more than anything. It scared him that he could easily imagine his hero's blue eyes turning icy, an uncaring disgust curdling behind them as he raised his raspy yet commanding voice. The worst part is he can't blame the man if he decides to do that, because Izuku isn't sure if it's even a good idea for him to have one for all. Admitting his doubts, even in the confined space of his mind, is a kind of blasphemy. It makes him want to stand up and shout that he earned one for all, that he can't just return it like a cheap, unwanted present. He can't, not when he was just starting to make it his own, not when he was closer than ever to achieving his dream, not when it isn't his fault that he'd need to give it up like this. More importantly than that, if All Might took one for all, Izuku couldn't ever truly repay All Might for everything he'd done. The way he was before, lacking a plan and means to become hero, he'd never have made it. All Might was the only reason that changed, and everything he has now is because of him. It's a debt that can't be ignored, one that wouldn't go away even if one for all did. There is a reason why he asked, though, in spite of how unfair it feels. Kai's influence, as much as he really wishes it wasn't, isn't just physical. A lot of his symptoms were, but Izuku has already caught himself thinking in eerily similar ways to Kai. Defenses and reasoning for Kai's actions kept popping into his head, and Kai-specific words keep festering in his brain. Cure instead of quirk, erasing bullet, insolent instead of annoying. The thought of filth, grime, germs and contamination were never more than a step behind him. He thought about it when he was alone, he thought about it when he was around people, when he was trying to sleep, and especially when his fingers connected with something and an explosion of chilling sensations ran up his arm. All Might hadn't chosen a successor who had those traits, but Izuku had been infected with them. At least Izuku won't be powerless if he doesn't have one for all, even though the idea of using Overhaul feels so wrong that he nearly breaks out into hives because of it. Izuku has never been so defeated as when he flops back onto his bed, emptily turning to face his smiling All Might-themed alarm. 12:56, it read. The clock's shaded eyes are judging him, he just knows it. Izuku turns the device around so he won't have to feel the weight of his shame. More time drips by, the seconds stretching into hours. Eventually, he pulls out his phone just to escape the silence. His recommended section is a lot of the same videos he's watched 100 times before. Who would win, Snaked Solid or Crackman? 5 hours and 5 seconds. Top 10 epic rap battles that weren't, 11:04. Restoring a vintage Laser Lady Funko Pop, 44:49. Cuppa Juice vs Orange Joe, 6 hours 55 minutes and 17 seconds. All Might's greatest hits, 12 hours 26 minutes and 39 seconds. What happened to Deep Sea Scuba? The disappearance of an icon, 2 hours 14 minutes and 14 seconds. I finally got the poster. Gold foil edition, 646. Each time he blinked, 30 minutes disappeared from the day. Time slipped away in a haze of his favorite comfort videos, until a noise breaks him from the daze. Footsteps echo outside his door, ones he recognizes as Minetta's. His classmates must be home. Minetta is talking about Uraraka, exclaiming that she's even hot when she's sad, with the messy chick look, whatever that's supposed to mean. The second person, Kaminari maybe, smacks him. At least that's what the thump, followed by an annoyed, ow, reads as. Uraraka. Right, Uraraka. She'd been acting weird, and he must be the biggest. Idiot now that he knows why. All that flinching, all that fear. Does Uraraka really think of him as a villain? Is she the only one? What about Mirio? Eri. Oh God. Thinking about Eri causes a terrible, choking knot in his gut. Every time he finds a new angle or question, the whole situation just gets more and more horrible. Did he think of Bakugo as Bakugo because Kai didn't know him? Is he technically not Inko's son anymore? Did he kill Sir Night Eye? A soft knock on his door stops Izuku's steady drift to rock bottom. He sniffles, wiping his eyes as he stutters, Who is I it? He's not sure what he was expecting, but it wasn't Todoroki's muffled voice to come calling from the other side of the door. Izuku, can I come in? Izuku rubs more tears from his face. He isn't sure what to say. The desperately positive part of his brain tells him that it'd make him feel better to talk to someone, but what if something went wrong? Izuku didn't want to hurt Todoroki, he didn't want to hurt anybody, especially his friend, but could he really just? Like nothing was different? What if it still goes well? What if it can't? What if that part of him is infected too? What if he can't ever talk to anybody again? He doesn't want to know. A new wave of tears comes to him, and he tries to mute his sobs. That's not fair. Izuku, I can hear you. Todoroki's even tone is tinged with concern. Izuku wants to turn into an acid and dissolve. Izuku swallows the painful knot in his throat. I'm sorry, I'll be there in a second. This isn't going to get any easier if I hide in my room. Summoning every bit of strength, he throws himself out of bed again, gathering all of his willpower to open the door. His shaky breathing evens out as he comes face to face with Todoroki. Instinctively, he hates how close they are, thinking about the germs between them, but how can he complain? If anyone, Izuku is the sick one. And he must look like a mess too. Puffy red eyes, tear-stained face, runny nose, but Todoroki's concern remains quiet. They stay in that standstill for a while longer. It's only broken when Todoroki's gaze pushes past Izuku and onto the dim, sunset-dusted room behind him. The boy's eyes widen in confusion as his two-toned pupils roll across Izuku's much-changed room. You got rid of your hero merchandise. The observation feels more like a question. Izuku bites his lip, fighting not to melt into a puddle yet again. I didn't. Not mostly. A lot of it's in my closet. I thought it looked better, but it seems like I can't do anything without it being . Izuku barely stops himself from blurting everything right there. He can't just say that while he's basically standing in the hall. Shamefully, he steps out of the doorway, returning to his bed. He curls up against the wall with his knees pressed tight to his chest. Sorry. Sit down, please. I'm not feeling a lot like myself. Todoroki takes the chair from Izuku's desk, and again, Izuku doesn't have it in him to be bothered by the closeness. Why? Todoroki asks. Izuku is too tired to run through the complications again. Aizawa is going to tell anyone tomorrow anyway. Maybe it'll be better to hear the news directly? Izuku soothes the headache coming on, deciding that he might as well. It's kind of complicated. Really complicated, actually. But maybe it's not that complicated, maybe I'm just overthinking things, and well... Todoroki, if I was a robot, would you still think I was still me? After that mess of a thought, Izuku can barely stop himself from giving up on life. That's not what he meant to say at all. It's a lot harder to admit that you've got villain disease than he thought. Izuku almost expects someone to appear just to laugh at him, but Todoroki somehow keeps a straight face. He even seems to consider the question, face falling with contemplation. After a few stretched moments, he says, "What kind of robot are you?" Todoroki doesn't seem to understand Izuku's confusion, charging ahead with, "Are you the kind of robot that thinks you're Izuku?" Izuku blinks, fumbling with a response. I guess so, yeah? But Todoroki nods, cutting him off. "Are you the kind of robot that acts like Izuku?" He almost asks if that matters, or how much. But he can only stutter out a weak, "I'd like to think so." The boy nods again, his longer hair bouncing with the small movement. "And are you the kind of robot that wants to save people?" There's an uncertainty within him. When All Might gave him One for All, he gave him a life worth living in return for becoming a hero that could surpass him. Even if the worst thing happened, if All Might revoked One for All, how could Izuku ever ask himself if he wanted to save people? It wasn't a question he could ask, it was a purpose. He will become a hero worthy of the title of successor, pay back his debts, and he has saved people to do that. Yes. He answers, but Todoroki. Then you're Izuku, the other boy firmly concludes, like it's been that simple this whole time. Izuku's jaw drops. He'd been preparing for rejection, even in his silly robot hypothetical, he'd been waiting for a no. His eyes start to burn. Todoroki tilts his head as tears cloud Izuku's golden eyes. "Are you a robot?" The other boy questions seriously. A bitter laugh bubbles from his throat. I wish I really wish I was, he admits. Then you're not a robot? Todoroki tilts his head innocently. Again, Izuku half laughs, half sobs. Why about that? Can you promise not to hate me? Hate is a strong word, the boy states plainly, but yes. Yes, I can. Right? Izuku takes a deep breath. Here goes everything. Do you remember that Yakuza? The one I lost to a couple days ago? Todoroki nods again, but doesn't exactly seem to be following him. That's not surprising. Todoroki had never been in the same room as Kai. The only knowledge the kid had was hearsay. He hopes that'll work out in his favor, because now's the hard part. Okay. Well, my eyes are a different color? Okay, because Kai's were yellow too, but it turns out that actually, that's not the only thing I got from him. What? Todoroki halts to think, a dense confusion pulling at his brow. What does that mean? Hey, no, he was wrong. This is the hard part. Izuku takes a deep breath. Well, I was going to say I'm glad you asked, but that's a lie. In the last moments of the raid, I tried to save someone. But Kai got a hold of me, and I don't know what happened after, but now I've got his quirk, and yeah, I still look like me, but my blood type, bones, skin, everything actually, they're his. Izuku swallows a mouthful of fuzzy anxiety, way beyond dizzy. Todoroki is silent, and that in itself seems crushing. All the times they fought together, talked, shared struggles, Todoroki could just decide that doesn't mean anything anymore. Uraraka already seemed to. Izuku draws in even further into himself, and when the silence has dragged on too long, he says, I can understand if you don't want to talk to me anymore. Not talk to you? Why would I do that? Todoroki cuts in, surprising Izuku with the righteous fervor in his voice. Do you remember what you told me during first year's sports festival? Izuku blinks. Of course. Sports festival. Shattered, purple fingers, anesthesia-clouded surgery, blinding determination, the taste of ashy ice and thawing fire mixing with copper on his tongue, the memories all flash quickly through his head. But I don't see why you're bringing that up now. It doesn't matter whose quirk you have, or what your genetics say. I may have inherited part of my quirk and half my genes from my father, but that doesn't make me him. You're Izuku. And Izuku is my friend. That hasn't changed, Todoroki declares that with stupid, impossible confidence. Izuku gives him a blank, small look. It's the best response he could have asked for, so why can't he believe it? Are you sure? Izuku questions, this is a lot, but you're accepting it just like that? Izuku didn't know what he was expecting. A part of him wanted Todoroki to reconsider, but Todoroki nods fiercely, without even a hint of hesitation. Izuku searches Todoroki's trusting eyes for a weakness or a gap, still unable to truly comprehend the acceptance. As the seconds tick by, though, it becomes clearer and clearer that the only doubt between them is Izuku's own. You make it sound easy, Izuku says, dejected. How can you be so sure? How do you know? How do I? How can I? Todoroki smiles. You're the kind of robot with Izuku's memories, aren't you? Izuku blinks in surprise, and Todoroki waits for an answer. He gives Todoroki a nod, though the movement is clogged with apprehension. Todoroki continues, and you're the kind of robot that acts like Midoriya? And mostly, he sniffles, the frown melting from his face. And you still want to save people? Offered Todoroki. There's a fire in his two-toned eyes. It told Izuku that it trusted him, believed. Loyalty supplies his brain. Izuku grins brightly at Todoroki, pumping his fist into the air as he shouts, yeah, a light with a new energy. He couldn't lose track of his life's goal. No matter what, he was going to repay his debt. That hasn't changed, he wouldn't let it. Todoroki returns Izuku's smile with matching ferocity. That's how I know you're Izuku. Izuku wiped his eyes for a final time, feeling genuinely better for the first time since this mess started. Thanks, Todoroki. I really needed to hear that. In response, Todoroki gave a modest nod. Izuku wanted to bask in the warmth of the moment, and he took a moment to soak in the clarity and trust, but there was still something bothering him. So, he asks, sorry if this is a weird question, but why are you the only one up here? I thought more people would be bothering me about Aizawa taking me aside this morning. After you left, Kiroshima told us you might need some space after you got home. Uraraka was more adamant about it than him though, his friend explains. Oh? You mean Uraraka didn't want anybody to see me? As the girl's pitiful, doe-eyed face from yesterday resurfaces, a cold, bitter lump grows in his throat, completely spoiling his good mood. Confirms Todoroki. I ignored both of them. He almost sounds proud when he says that. He should be too. That shows a useful preference for Izuku. And Izuku rewards him with a bright smile. You don't know how much that means to me. It's just a shame some people aren't going to be as understanding as you. Todoroki just blinks at him like the notion hadn't even crossed his mind. Was I being understanding? Izuku laughs nervously, stifling a hit of irritation. I mean, I thought so. At least, compared to some other people. The look Todoroki gives him this time is even more confused. You mean Bakugo? The air turned unbreathable in his throat, causing Izuku to choke slightly. His ears already hurt imagining how the kid is going to take this. Probably, but I was thinking something closer to Uraraka? Todoroki blinks at him again like Izuku told him the moon was flat, insisting she would understand. You'd think so, wouldn't you? He muses, picturing her unkempt, fearful appearance from the other day. But no, I'm pretty sure she thinks I'm evil. But you're not evil, Todoroki points out simply. That incredibly low assurance feels like sweet music to him. That's right, Izuku thinks, emerging more from his pathetic, self-pitying cocoon. I'm not evil. I haven't done anything to deserve this, but she's already treating me like a villain. Izuku shrugs, trying to pretend he hasn't started boiling. I get why she'd be a bit nervous, but I really don't get why I have to be the bad guy here. It feels unfair, doesn't it? Well, I know you guys usually get along, but... Izuku trails off on purpose, hoping Todoroki will bite, but then the boy just tilts his head and Izuku remembers that he's going to have to do all the work here. But if you decide to talk to her, don't put a lot of thought into what she says. She's been putting herself under a lot of stress lately. Really, I can't even imagine what kinds of things she might mouth off about. But I'm not saying you can't listen. I won't stop you or anything, but if you have concerns, come to me first. We're friends, I'll be happy to hear them. As he looks at Todoroki's sullen face, he thinks he might feel bad for presenting Uraraka this way. At the same time, though, he can't let her views affect anyone else, especially Todoroki. This doesn't have to be a permanent solution. Uraraka can always apologize to Izuku. If she does, he'll be sure to take this back. Under a few new terms, of course. That's only fair considering the headache she's giving him. Todoroki seemingly relents with a measured, okay. The smile on Izuku's face brightens further. Great. I'm really happy we agree here. Then you're going to talk to her again too? Todoroki asked, his soft, somewhat hopeful tone making it difficult for Izuku to get mad that he completely missed the point. Me? Stutters Izuku. I already have? Talk to her again, Todoroki suggests, and geez, sometimes he can be so dense. Izuku's smile tightens. You know, I appreciate the thought, but do you really think I should be the one who reaches out to her? Yes, the boy answers plainly, using the same simple determination as earlier. Unfortunately, Izuku can't enjoy it this time. Loyalty is only good when loyal to a worthy person. And Uraraka? Well, if she's someone who can toss away years of friendship just like that, Todoroki's time might be better spent elsewhere. But a glance at Todoroki is all Izuku needs to know that argument won't fly, not for the moment, anyway. Fine, he relents, mustering up his best nonchalant voice, but not right now. I'm, pretty exhausted. Okay. Todoroki stands up abruptly, steely determination in his stance as he faces the door. Good night. He's already turning the handle. W8. Izuku blurts, scrambling to the edge of his bed. Where are you going? I didn't even say you could leave yet. You said you were exhausted. Todoroki explains that like Izuku is the one who's being weird, giving him a short wave and a soft goodnight before making his way down the hall. Izuku just stares at the empty space in the door, jaw open and face hot. Well, he's pretty sure Todoroki didn't mean to be rude. Izuku sighs, falling back onto his bedding. You're Izuku. And Izuku is my friend. That hasn't changed. The corners of his mouth lift warmly. Yes, there's always room for improvement, but when isn't there? This was a success. And maybe tomorrow won't be so bad. As if to kick Izuku in the teeth, the next day arrives with a gift of anxiety, nausea, and a coughing fit. The episode feels like it lasts hours, but in reality the fit was probably closer to 15 minutes. By the time he's done, he's bent and heaving, head fuzzy and hands buzzing. Izuku has a bad feeling that he's going to be waking up like this a lot. His trusty all-night clock tells him school is already in session, meaning his classmates are gone. And he's thankful, because despite Todoroki's efforts yesterday, the thick, roped dread tied around seeing his class is back. For all Izuku knows, Aizawa could be telling them right now. Okay, maybe not right now. Knowing Aizawa, he would probably tell them at the end of the day so they aren't distracted during class, but that's not the point. The point was they'd know soon, and he'll have to face them in a few short hours. The damage control was inevitable, and he'll be stuck for some time explaining, and he's exhausted already, but who knows? They could impress him. It's not impossible that they come out of the situation sympathetic. That's the hope, at least, and it's good to be hopeful. What's also good? Self-care. Yesterday, Izuku hadn't focused much on his needs, and his body took its revenge today. Hunger is the most obvious symptom. His stomach turns and complains with loud groans. He feels as though he might pass out if he doesn't eat, but could he really pick up and munch on just anything in the kitchen? The food in there was already of questionable quality, and that's ignoring the dozen or so people that already used the space. As bad as that is on its own, to make things worse, he hadn't showered last night, and couldn't keep down the lukewarm disgust that rose whenever he thought about how much grime and dirt had already gathered between then and now. It keeps him feverish for the first few minutes while he sprinted to a shower, and even afterward leaves him hugging himself, never wanting to touch anything ever again. Izuku hadn't put gloves on, and felt naked without them. When he does touch something, he half expects it to crumble, but his hands don't act on their own, which is relieving. Finding something to eat turned out to be impossible. He isn't sure how he'd managed to choke down anything from the kitchen before, because the small signs of use, like rice bags being half empty or egg cartons left open, caused him to lose his appetite faster than he could blink. Izuku couldn't stop thinking about how everything had been contaminated by touch, or possibly hiding rot. Not even sealed food like protein bars or bags of roasted peanuts were passable. What if some contamination got into the machinery? Or they weren't sealed properly? And what about the germs on the outside of the bag that he couldn't see? He doesn't want any of that stuff in his system. Thinking about it makes him so queasy he GGS. After about an hour, Izuku's stomach is still empty, and his spirit is even lower than when he started. Sniffling, Izuku wipes his eyes of the already gathered tears. How did Kai ever survive long enough to become a Yakuza boss? A distant crash breaks Izuku from his thoughts. He snaps his head to the source of the noise, which turns out to be the entrance to the dorms, and heaving in the doorway, hands crackling with orange sparkler explosions, is Bakugo. But school is still in session, isn't it? Izuku doesn't get the chance to ask about it before Bakugo starts lunging toward Izuku, hand arched furiously as it hurtles to Izuku's collar. Brain reverting to panic mode, his right hand twitches violently, beginning to move and meet the attack. Don't touch me, Izuku warns, knowing there's not enough time to stop his hand from colliding with Bakugo's. The muscle memory is too strong, too practiced after who knows how long spent reducing the human body to red mist. If he dies, my life is over. My life over? Because of him? Izuku's hand closes on Bakugo's forearm. His whole body tenses for the inevitable splat as their skin connects, and just as it seems an impact is due, Bakugo's hand wrenches around his collar, intact. There's an awful, diseased buzzing where his hand meets Bakugo's skin, but the atoms don't break apart. His arm doesn't move at all, aside from the small section of skin Izuku pulls with the grip from his hand. Still, he waits for those sickening, thin lines that accompanied Overhaul to appear, but they don't. Don't touch you, twerp? Bakugo forces Izuku's attention back to him, back to the small particles of spit spewing from his maw as he spears, What are you gonna do about it? You jaundiced BSRD. Non longer in full panic mode, an unpleasant awareness of the hives dotting his skin hits him with full, contemptive force. He barely stops himself from scowling as Bakugo's short, angry breaths breach him with who knows what kinds of filth. There wasn't a word for how much he hated it, how much more his hands tighten and teeth grind against each other. It gets difficult to think. Everything his brain produces is frayed, pulsing with a cagey, violent revulsion. Somehow, he swallows the newest tidal wave of dangerous emotions, trying to reason, Bakugo. Bakugo? Is that all I am? Then you stranger? He hisses his words, causing small droplets of spit to land on Izuku's hive-speckled neck. His breath hitches in time with a harsh, threatening spasm from his fingers, 5 of which were still dug into Bakugo's arm. If I don't get him off me soon, I think I'm really going to kill him? In a charged motion, Izuku takes his free hand, wrapping it around the arm Bakugo is grabbing his collar with. He forces Bakugo off with a harsh, jolting push. It's above revolting to touch Bakugo willingly, but a wave of cool relief washes over him once the contact finally breaks. The ugly, frayed knots that were his thoughts start to iron themselves back into a smooth, rational state. Bakugo stumbles back, cursing. Izuku, still reeling from the alien assault of emotions, readies himself for Bakugo's second attempt to lunge, but the kid just stays there, frothing at Izuku like a rabid dog. Why did you have to touch me? Izuku GGS, clawing at the areas where the contamination was strongest as they fester with hives. It's not clean, he can feel the filth on his skin like a thick coat of mud. What? The bark is gone from Bakugo's voice. What's that supposed to mean? Izuku stops his preening to glare. This is about Kai, isn't it? Well, Bakugo, there's something you might want to know before grabbing me again. Kai used to kill people for grazing him, and I have his muscle memory. Bakugo blinks at him, anger completely gone from his expression, leaving a slightly pale shock behind. Aizawa didn't. Aizawa didn't what? Didn't remind you to take your brain with you when you left? Didn't walk you to the roof so you could take a dive off it because you clearly have a death wish. He bites, his red-hot anger turning cold as it leaves his mouth. He doesn't think he's being harsh, not considering how far Bakugo crossed the line. At least, he doesn't think that until Bakugo's eyes narrow, hostility once again weighing his face into a scowl. Since when does Deku talk like that? Izuku's own anger is immediately undercut, vanishing in a self-conscious plume. Ooh. You want a stupid apology for grabbing your stupid collar? Here, sorry I didn't know you'd freak out and threaten to kill me. Yeah, screw me, I wasn't expecting Deku to do that, but Deku doesn't have shitty, PSS yellow eyes, does he? Last time I checked, he doesn't call me Bakugo either. Bakugo's hands ball into white-knuckled fists. Now that I'm thinking about it, you don't have a lot in common with him, do you? Those last words echo in Izuku's ears, painfully lingering inside his head. That's not fair. You think you can just say that to me? Just storm in here and... He trails off, noticing how Bakugo's lips are already curled in a defensive anger. It's a look Izuku is deeply familiar with, and having taken a small step back, the redness in Bakugo's face and his watery eyes are apparent. Bakugo was always aggressive, but Izuku must have forgot how fragile he can be. If something doesn't change, things are just going to get more and more heated until there's no going back. He doesn't need to make an enemy if he doesn't have to. So, with a begrudging breath, Izuku swallows his anger and pride in a lumpy, painful gulp. I can make him regret this later, but right now, that's not what this is about. Use the carrot, not the stick. Think, what does Bakugo need from me? You just want to know I'm still me, don't you? Izuku's sudden change in tone deflates Bakugo's spiky exterior, replacing his heated gaze with a surprised one. Yeah? Genius? What makes you think that? Bakugo's words are sharp, but his voice wavers, betraying the vulnerability underneath. Because I want to know I'm still me too, Izuku explains, sighing deeply. Do you think I'm not worried that I haven't been asking myself the same things? Say I don't act a lot like I did, that hurts, but fine, I know it's not the best. Although Bakugo's eyes are still defiant, His explosive facade has nearly broken. Look, I'm sorry, but if you're looking for proof, I don't think I can convince you. I could start listing memories, or I could tell you that I passed a lie detector test on whether I really, truly think I'm Midoriya, but if you don't think that's enough to make me, well, I can't force you. What I can say is, if you do just treat me like Kai, then I guess we really are strangers, Kaken. Izuku waits for Bakugo's response patiently, biting his lip to contain the expectant adrenaline. Bakugo's scowl deepens, and for a moment, Izuku thinks he might lunge again. Then, the kid's lip starts to tremble and rare tears fight their way from his red eyes. Bakugo chokes, wiping the water from his face with harsh swipes. Deku, you stupid bee, why'd you have to let this happen? Irritation grates against his mood. Let this happen? No, just be happy that Bakugo isn't still going feral. Think of it like a win. Everything went great, right? Izuku laughs shallowly. What can I say? I've always had bad luck. The fucking worst. The day everyone was supposed to return from internships held a lot of changes for Class A. It didn't seem that way at first. As their fellow classmates arrived at the dorms, everything fell into place the same as any other post-internships reunion. Bakugo burst through the door, grumpy. Todoroki was as unfazed as ever. Ida was emblazoned with a new passion for heroics. Mina had brought a host of gossip and tales, and Yaoyorozu somehow grew quieter. Class A had begun mingling and sharing their experiences. All of the usual suspects were suspicious in their usual way. Only, as jokes and stories were passed around, the class noticed that they were missing a few people. Tsuyu, Kiroshima, Uraraka, and Midoriya were nowhere to be seen. Does anybody remember who they were stationed with? Hagakure questioned, invisibly swiveling her head in search of her classmates. Oh, I know. Mina chimed in. Ochako went with Gunhead, Tsuyu with Ryukyu, and Kiroshima with Fat Gum. And Midoriya? Mina paused, making a long noise as she tried remembering Midoriya's agency. Seeing this, Bakugo took her paws and spat. Deku went with Night. Surprised you don't remember, he didn't stop yapping for days after he got the news. Oh, can you believe it, Kaken? Night used to be like, his sidekick. Some stupid sheet like that. Ida, as if deaf to the last mocking part of Bakugo's comment, brightened, his eyes gleaming with clarity. He chopped enthusiastically as he said, "Thank you for sparking my memory, Bakugo. Midoriya informed me of a Yakuza group their agencies teamed up to thwart Shai Hasaikai." As Ida's words sunk in, the air around the class grew tighter, worry knotting their brows and twisting their stomachs. Heroism was dangerous, and if so many agencies had to team up against any group, they had to be pretty dangerous as well. Nobody had to say anything for the class to start worrying. They probably just got caught up talking to really hot girls, you know? Kaminari joked, failing to break the tension. They're, probably too busy having a good time to worry about us. Mineta, joining Kaminari to puppet the joke's corpse, said, "Why yeah, totally. If I had a bunch of smokin' babes to talk with, I'd probably forget about us too. Do you think something happened to them?" Yaoyorozu asked, brining the somberness back to lethal levels. "Not really," Todoroki added, plainly unaware and unbothered by the atmosphere. "They're all strong." Pete, Bakugo barked a sharp, tense laugh. "Captain Obvious over here. Creation Beach, make icy hot an award, would ya? Fuckin' everybody here knows they're strong, but they're not exactly a quartet of All Mights. If they get hurt good enough, they'll die the same as anyone." Ida huffed indignantly, giving the boy a stern glare. "Bakugo, please, there's no need to say something so nuclear, especially when they could be held up by something so simple as public transportation." Exactly. Tsuyu, one of the aforementioned missing classmates, let out a croak. Every pair of eyes in Class A shot to her, nearly bursting out of their heads with shock. How long have you been standing there?" Over half the class screeched. "Not long." Tsuyu awkwardly informed them. "Wait, where's Shitty Hair and Deku?" Bakugo hounded, closing in on Tsuyu with an aggressive lean. Tsuyu, holding her hands over her ears for protection from Bakugo's booming voice, answers, "Midoriya is in the hospital, but that's all I know." Midoriya, being infamous for his uncanny ability to break his own bones, was not exactly a stranger to hospitals. Class A barely mustered a collective blink. Was it a leg or arm fracture? Ida asked, casual but still politely concerned. Tsu shrugged, and the rest of the class assumed it was likely both. Eventually, Kiroshima and Uraraka do reach the class-wide rendezvous, and the sea-whistle of concern starts anew when Uraraka arrives with puffy eyes and disheveled clothes. The girls swarm her with attention, freely offering her their free butt-kicking services, although Uraraka is beyond inconsolable. Kiroshima seems to be more stable, if only slightly, and has dark bags under his eyes. Neither of the pair were eager to talk about what led them to this, and Tsu seemed as genuinely left out of the loop as the rest of them. Over the next few days, Uraraka and Kiroshima were the focus of Class A's efforts. Uraraka was glued to the TV and her favorite set of pajamas, and Kiroshima could be found in the dorm's personal gym at all hours of the day and night, despite Mina's roundabout efforts to get him to relax just a little. Bakugo reluctantly grew concerned too, carrying in his own gruff way as he physically pulled Kiroshima away from the weights if he'd been at it for more than 3 hours at once. When they finally got news of Midoriya, it didn't seem unusual. Their friend was coming back soon after a short stay in the hospital, having sustained no major injuries. Midoriya always seemed to balance the thin line between breaking and irreversibly shattering his body, so this didn't bother anyone either. Except, of course, Uraraka. Upon hearing the news, a horror-stricken expression passed her face, and she left for her room, not showing up to school the next day. Of all the things the class expected, they hadn't anticipated finding Midoriya waiting for them in the commons, reeking of Clorox wipes and wearing blue RBB gloves. Most of all, they hadn't expected the stark change of eye color. It was common knowledge that Midoriya's eyes matched his hair, both sharing their friendly green coloring. However, the person the class was faced with had brilliant yellow eyes, piercing and analytical, slightly cold even as the boy they were attached to sputtered out nervous greetings. To call it unsettling would have been an overstatement, and the class had settled into a familiar rhythm by the end of the night. Things were different after internships, but nobody except Kiroshima and Uraraka knew just how much. Then, Aizawa arrived at the dorms, searching for Midoriya with an ominous manila folder tucked between his arms. The class tried extracting information, employing every underhanded tactic and blackmail they could, threatening to leak Aizawa's phone number only to be shut down with the reminder that doxing was a crime. They looked to Midoriya for answers when Kiroshima brought him, even though the confusion on his face gave them the most explanation they'd get. Nobody else knew how much things had changed until Aizawa told Midoriya, according to every test we could find, you are Chisaki. Nobody else knew until Todoroki found a distraught Midoriya, crying in his room, only for Midoriya to confess, I have Kai's quirk, and why yeah, I still look like me, but my blood type, bones, skin, everything actually, they're his. Nobody else knows until the next day. Class A is doing their best to go about their schedules, and Aizawa is uncharacteristically despondent. Every time he wasn't mid-lecture or answering a question, he was looking over a stack of papers with yellow, orange, and red markings. There was enough tension laid between their teacher's brow to snap the school building clean in half, but when anyone asked, Aizawa responded with a cryptic, you'll know soon enough. Ever since returning from lunch, the atmosphere in the classroom had changed even further. The students exchanged questioning glances and whispers among each other, each giving their own reason as to why they thought Aizawa had instructed them not to move and left to take care of something. Did something happen with the school festival? Mina asked sheepishly. No, it's probably the last test, Kaminari replied, head hanging hopelessly over his desk. Just start digging my grave, I know I bombed it. Don't be dumb, Mineta scoffed, puffing his chest out confidently. It's obvious that Principal Nedzu finally got my ideas for the new, improved female uniform. Yayorozu, who was just done and tired, gave him a harsh glare. If Aizawa is going to address that, it won't be for the reason you're thinking. Humph. Aoyama interjected, if Monsieur Aizawa is going to talk about uniforms, it'll clearly be about how mine is clearly not dazzling enough. Snapping, Bakugo slammed the desks, erupting from his seat with a deep scowl. Could you dumbass shut up? Uniforms? Am I the only one who's noticed how FING weird round cheeks, shitty hair and Deku have been acting? Ida chops the air in front of the boy's face, as though he's trying to cut him off like a director on a movie set. Bakugo. How many times do I have to explain that they all had very turbulent internships? Not just as heroes, but as upstanding people. It is inappropriate to speculate when we don't have full information. Bakugo fell back into his seat, rolling his eyes. Well, the next time Round Cheeks starts pulling waterworks in the middle of breakfast, I'll make sure to tell her that her best friend could care less about why she's flavoring her Captain Crunch with tears. Ida stiffens, suddenly distant in an instant. Kaminari, trying to keep things from turning venomous, adds, "Okay, harsh, let's not bite each other's heads off here. We're all just trying to do what's best." Well, that's it. Bakugo has a point. The Bakugo in question throws his hands in the air, as if to say, "No duh." Mina shrugs, going on with a measured, "Well, yeah. I was trying to take a shower yesterday, and all the hot water was gone, in both dorms. I go to see who's hogging it, and it turns out Midoriya had been in there for, like, the last 5 hours. Just so you guys know, that's, like, really bad for your skin. And Kiroshima did ask me to make him some foundation to hide his eye bags." Yaoyorozu confesses dimly. Ida let out a short, tired breath. "We need to do something about this." Bakugo cranked his neck to glare at Ida. "Oh, really? 'Cause I thought." The doors to the classroom flopped open, robbing their conversation of its heat and inertia. Aizawa lingered in the doorway while his class wordlessly settled back into their desks, even Bakugo begrudgingly pulling himself into his seat. Aizawa walks up to the blackboard at the front of the class, picking up a weathered piece of chalk and retrieving the colorfully marked papers from his desk before Ida interrupts him loudly. "Hold on. Aizawa, though I'm not sure why we haven't started class yet, shouldn't we wait for Uraraka, Kiroshima, and Todoroki? They went out during lunch and still have not returned." A series of murmured agreements follow, but Aizawa only blinks, achingly unaffected. "No, this announcement is old news for Uraraka and Kiroshima, and Todoroki told me he found out last night, so I see no reason to put them through an unnecessary process." Ida's protests melt on his tongue, and he dips back into his seat with a notable lack of structure. Although technically being an explanation, nobody in the room would say that eased their confusion. Tsuyu raised her hand limply. "Does this have anything to do with you taking Midoriya away yesterday?" she asked, tilting her head in time with a frog-like crow. "Very observant, Azui, does," Aizawa acknowledged, turning his back on them to scribble something down on the blackboard. Stepping away reveals the writing plainly. "What is Midoriya's blood type?" 2 hands shoot up immediately, Bakugo and Ida's, while a few others follow suit with less confident raises. Aizawa scans his lot of students, eyes settling on Ida, whose hand shot up ever so slightly earlier. "Very well, Ida, what do you think it is?" "Type O," answered Ida, only to be met with an affirmative grumble from Bakugo. Aizawa nodded his head slowly. "Yes, that is incorrect." Ida blinked, confusion clouding his face. "Excuse me? Do you mean correct? I'm confident that it's O." "I didn't misspeak," Aizawa insisted shortly. "Now, do we have any other guesses?" "Yeah," Bakugo grits, raising his hand with a toothy scowl. "And I guess O, because Glasses was right, it is O." Again, Aizawa shook his head. "If I'd asked you that a week ago, you would have been right. But as the more observant of you may have noticed, it's not a week ago, and never will be again. Midoriya's blood type is B." Mina raised her voice nervously. "Mr. Aizawa, what does this have to, do with anything? Also, that doesn't really make sense." "You're right, at least, it doesn't make sense considering the current knowledge you have. Someone's blood type don't change for no reason, so what knowledge could I have that you lack?" There's an expectant pause in Aizawa's speech, but Class A doesn't move to answer it, as they're on busy struggling to grapple the implications he's already laid down. "Nobody? All right then, let's go over some observations and facts about recent events." Aizawa jots down a name on the board. "First, let's start at the beginning with a criminal named Chisaki Kai, and by now I'm sure you've all heard of him, but in case you haven't, He's the 19-year-old leader of an anti-quirk Yakuza organization called the Shai Hasaikai. Any questions? Yeah, Bakugo hissed, too busy crossing his arms to raise his hand. What the F? Does this have to do with Deku's blood type? Be patient, I'm getting there. Aizawa turns around again, writing another term on the board. This, Overhaul, is Chisaki's quirk, and you may have heard about it as well. With the touch of one of his fingers, Chisaki was capable of reducing and reshaping any matter into a different form. From what I understand, Midoriya got within range of it while pursuing Chisaki, and in some unknown manner, it was utilized on the both of them. Another lapse in Aizawa's words give the class an opportunity to process and ask. Kaminari flinches his arm into a raise. Aizawa nods at him, lending him permission to talk. Kaminari cleared his throat with a weak cough. This is probably a stupid question, but if it's Midoriya's blood type and eye color that got messed with, why are we, announcing it? Doesn't a guy have a right to having weird body problems? Yes and no. If this were only regarding Midoriya and his personal health, I would also prefer to keep it private, but does it seem like it's only his eye color that's changed? Kaminari rubbed the back of his neck. Well, he did wash his hands for an entire Buzzsaw Man episode, but there are a lot of reasons why a guy would want to wash his hands that long. Aizawa didn't seem impressed. Save the toilet humor for after school. This discussion will not benefit from it. Kaminari melted. Sorry, Mr. Aizawa? Aizawa sighed. To resume, Chisaki used his overhaul on both himself and Midoriya, which resulted in rather severe biological changes, such as eye color, blood type, dental and fingerprint patterns, as well as a variety of differences in skeletal structure. But they're still his, aren't they? It's just the shape that's different? Interrupted Yaoyorozu, fidgeting fiercely with her hand. The rest of Class A was in a similar shape, all marked with thin, queasy frowns and uncomfortable eyes. If you hadn't cut me off, you might not have needed to ask that. As I was going to explain, post-raid a lot of Midoriya's internal components are identical to Chisaki's, meaning his physical body is simply an overhauled version that resembles Midoriya's old one. Instantly, Bakugo is out of his seat, orange sparklers sizzling from his palms. Excuse me? Internal components? Deku isn't a FING car. If you swap out enough parts, that's not Deku, that's a villain. It doesn't matter what he looks like on the outside. If that blood beach with the League of Bastards impersonates someone, she doesn't suddenly get to be them. Aizawa glares sternly. Sit back down, Bakugo. I will not tolerate this kind of outburst. No wonder Deku was acting so weird this whole time, not even that, since the raid dash. Bakugo's chair scrapes against the classroom floor as he seethed to the door. Take one step out of that door and you're suspended for a week, Aizawa warned, but not that Bakugo seemed to care as he pushed outside. To the surprise of everyone watching, Aizawa didn't capture his rogue student. In the hero's head, he knew he couldn't risk leaving the rest of his students alone with half-complete information. No, as much as he hated it, he had to trust that Bakugo and Midoriya would find a way to resolve the situation without either sustaining major injuries, a bet Aizawa wasn't eager to wage, but a bet he had to take. Meanwhile, Class A's eyes were left staring at the empty space Bakugo left, similar questions and concerns running rampant in their brains. Aizawa gathered himself, trying not to show the collapsing exhaustion he was struggling at the doorstep of. Class, I know this isn't an ideal situation, but in heroics you can't lose your head like Bakugo. Now because the rest of you stayed, I'm going to open the next hour or so to questions. Ida was the first one to raise his hand, hesitant as he was, saying, Forgive me, but you said Chisaki activated his quirk on both Midoriya and himself. Is Chisaki not still around? I don't understand why a villain would do such a thing, strategically or otherwise. As far as I can tell, Chisaki is not around. Unfortunately, I also don't know what provoked this outcome. However, based on the last parts of the raid, I think there's a possibility he may have been trying to fuse Midoriya's quirk and arms to himself for a second wind. This wouldn't explain why Midoriya managed to retain so much of himself, but I can't imagine Chisaki intentionally plotting for this outcome. Siro spoke next, asking sheepishly what Aizawa meant by fuse, an explanation that only disturbed the class more. So, Kaminari started, cringing. I know I don't always ask the smartest questions, so please stop me if this is stupid, but like, Bakugo kinda yelled it earlier, and how do we know it's actually Midoriya and not some villain schmuck pretending to be him? Simple, we put him through a truth quirk. Whatever physical resemblances he might have to Chisaki are just that, physical. Kaminari gives Aizawa a bitter frown. And, you know what about mental ones? Jokes aside, washing your hands for a whole Buzzsaw Man episode isn't exactly typical Tuesday Midoriya. If his behaviors are a problem, call them out, but if they're not, don't. I know you all must be feeling very stressed right now, but don't forget that Midoriya is likely going through something 1,000 times worse. Having been his teacher for the past 2 years and seeing how distraught he was yesterday, I can't imagine what's going through his head, which is why I'm answering these questions instead of him. I don't think Midoriya could take very much poking at his identity right now. Kaminari seemed satisfied after that, so did the rest of Class A, if reluctantly. The rest of the hour was spent on less intense, though related questions. Did Midoriya have Chisaki's quirk? Was the upcoming school festival going to be changed because of this? How were they going to cheer Uraraka and Kiroshima up? How were they going to reassure Midoriya? Why was Midoriya's luck so bad? By the end of the day, though Kiroshima, Todoroki and Uraraka are still out, Class A is much calmer, if not extremely weirded out by the deadly obstacle course that has been their time at UA. Midoriya, meanwhile, has been panicking for the past few hours, pacing a hole in the floor of the commons. When his class arrives to greet him, everything is tense for a moment. Midoriya is tense because he's terrified that their faces will turn sour with disgust as they condemn him. His class is tense because they don't want to jostle the kid who they still understood to be their friend. It takes Bakugo to break the silence, the boy gruffly saying, "He's still the stupid loser we know." Even though that annoys Izuku, it eases the tension, prompting supportive resolutions from the others. I don't have very many followers, so I feel kind of silly doing a post on this, but maybe it's good to give a final update here. I don't usually like giving out information about my real life online, but I feel like my actions will make more sense with a bit of context. I'm 17, by this fall of 2024 I would have been a senior in high school, if I hadn't graduated a year early due to taking extra classes online. But I did graduate early. And now it's time for me to go to college. Choose a career. Take up responsibilities and become a real person. I'm busier than I ever was before, and I feel almost sick with how many things I need to get done and prepare for. I feel like I'm outgrowing a lot of the things I used to do, like writing/reading fanfic and making AUS and fan art. I know that adults can still enjoy those things, and there's nothing inherently bad or childish about enjoying that stuff, and if you're an adult who finds relaxation and community in fandom, there's no problem with that. More power to you, honestly. However, for me, fandom/fanfic is too linked with the that's a kid. I cherish those memories, but they're the past. I can't afford to hold on to that anymore. That said, I still enjoy the shows and I'll still keep up with them, but I feel weird being so invested in fandom now. It isn't the same. To everyone that liked the stuff I've made, you were the joy in my life for many years. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And I'm sorry that I couldn't deliver more. I probably won't post here ever again. Goodbye.